Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thought. Now let's start the video. Time flowed, and with it, so did the tide of Ace's school life. Though her arrival had sparked fear and chaos, the storm gradually began to settle. After hearing the story of her upbringing, the cold, clinical world she had endured, Courtney and the other girls no longer saw her as a villain, but as a girl who had never been given a chance at normalcy. Their sympathy turned into soft kindness, and slowly, cautiously, they started to treat her like one of their own. Ace's calm, respectful demeanor made it easier. She never forced herself into their conversations, never demanded attention. She listened, observed, and when she did speak, it was with sincerity that disarmed even the most skeptical of hearts. And there was another unexpected benefit: her presence. The mean girls who had long ruled with pettiness and snide remarks now avoided the group altogether. One look into Ace's unblinking eyes was enough to silence even the boldest of bullies. Courtney noticed the shift the most. She no longer felt like she was babysitting some dangerous experiment. Ace had proven herself more mature, more composed than half the school combined. But that didn't mean Courtney had stopped her daily reports. Every word Ace shared with her, Courtney passed on to her stepfather, and every word he received was filtered to the League. The detail about Ashbourne's past being worse than Ace's had raised more than one flag. It lent credence to Batman's theory that Ashbourne's Black was not just a dangerous man, but possibly a victim of something darker. Ashbourne, however, remained at his usual pace. He kept watching Ace's life unfold from the comfort of shadows, never far, but never intruding. He had assigned some of the shadows to remain close to her, at all times, invisible guardians no one noticed but always near. And then there was Rex. The old man didn't like and had even resisted the idea of adopting Ace at first, but now he practically acted like a grandfather. He'd become so invested in Ace's life that even Ashbourne found it excessive at times. But today wasn't about watching from afar. Ashbourne walked through the peaceful streets of Metropolis, the city bustling with midday energy. His long coat fluttered gently in the wind as his eyes scanned storefronts. A gift. He still hadn't found the right one. Ace's birthday was approaching, and though she might not expect anything, he intended to make it special. He turned a corner, only to pause when he saw two very familiar faces. Kara Zor-Azrael and Clark Kent, Supergirl and Superman, stood just ahead, wearing civilian clothes. Kara had a yellow shirt and jeans, her hair tied back casually, and eyeglasses. Clark, the journalist civilian, wore a blue suit, his glasses perched low on his nose. Ashbourne spoke with his usual quiet confidence. "Kara, Clark," he greeted smoothly. Both were caught off guard by the second word. Clark blinked in surprise. "Do we know each other?" Ashbourne gave a faint smile. "I keep track of those who might participate in attacking my office for no reason." Clark's polite expression cracked for a second. He froze. Ashbourne, unfazed, walked past him casually and added, "Don't worry, I won't take from you time in whatever you two are planning." Before he could step away, Clark's hand gently but firmly landed on his shoulder. "We need to talk," he said, voice serious. Ashbourne turned his head, his smile never fading. "No one knows but me. I already knew during the trial. It wasn't hard to figure out." His tone was almost bored. "Now, unless you're going to physically stop me, I have a gift that won't buy itself." Clark's eye twitched. He hadn't even asked the question yet. Kara, curious, tilted her head. "What gift?" "Ace's birthday is coming soon," Ashbourne replied simply. "Still haven't found something suitable." Kara fell silent. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but laced with a bitterness she didn't hide. "I should have expected it was for her." Ashbourne heard the edge in her words but didn't comment. He had no desire to argue. Clark noticed it too, but chose not to bring it up, shifting the subject instead. "I want to talk about Stargirl," Clark said. Ashbourne shrugged with ease. "I blackmailed her into helping, yes, but it worked fine, didn't it? I am a law-abiding citizen and won't do anything nefarious." Superman's jaw tightened, thoroughly annoyed now being answered again before saying his piece, and for a moment he thought Ashbourne was the worst version of Bruce. Clark's eyes narrowed at the ever-calm Ashbourne. There was something about the man's smile, always there, always unreadable, that made him uneasy. But before he could speak further, a thunderous explosion cracked through the city's peace. The ground trembled. Civilians screamed. One of the buildings nearby had been reduced to rubble. smoke and dust rising into the sky like a signal flare. From behind the thick cloud of debris, a hulking figure emerged, a giant mechanical toy, complete with blue paint and exaggerated limbs. It took a step forward, shaking the ground. At its top stood the villainous Toyman, operating the machine from a control panel embedded in its head. Around him, more figures stepped into the chaos. Livewire with sparks dancing across her blue skin, Parasite cracking his knuckles hungrily, and Metallo, the cold green glow of kryptonite pulsing from his chest. A few more dangerous faces joined them, completing the small rogue battalion. Ashbourne's eyes scanned the group. "That's quite the lineup," he said lightly. "Looks like they're inviting your Justice League into an open fight." Clark gave him a sidelong glance before blurring away in a rush of wind. Kara turned to Ashbourne briefly, her tone curt. "Run to a safe place. We'll handle this." Then she too vanished as she joined her cousin midair. In the span of a second, Superman and Supergirl floated above the scene, now clad in their iconic uniforms. Ashbourne watched with mild amusement. How do they fold the capes under those civilian clothes? He mused idly, but his thoughts were cut short when he noticed someone stomping in his direction. Metallo. The villain's eyes glowed with fury as he stormed toward Ashbourne. "Of all the places, I didn't expect to see you here." Ashbourne tilted his head, still wearing that familiar faint smile. "Don't you have more pressing matters?" "Two heroes in blue, to be exact." Metallo didn't bother replying. He just charged. Ashbourne let out a weary sigh. He truly didn't want to be involved in this. But now, with the towering cyborg sprinting toward him, he had little choice. He raised his right arm casually, and in a flash, a small missile launched from his hidden arm guard. Metallo was flung backward, crashing into a car with a metallic groan. "You never learn," Ashbourne muttered. Metallo groaned, rising to his feet, his anger doubling. "Oh, I learn." He raised one arm and a hatch opened. A missile shot out with a piercing whistle, heading straight for Ashbourne. With a casual step to the side, Ashbourne dodged the missile, then retaliated instantly. Another missile launched and struck Metallo squarely, launching him back even more. At that moment, more heroes arrived. The Flash in a blur of red, Green Lantern with his glowing ring ready, Wonder Woman with her sword drawn, Martian Manhunter phasing through buildings, and Batman emerging from a glider above. All eyes momentarily flicked to Ashbourne, who stood unharmed as Metallo struggled to rise again. Wonder Woman halted briefly beside him. Her voice was firm. "This is not your place. We will take care of this." Ashbourne offered no resistance, only nodding slightly. "I couldn't agree more." He turned, walking away with unhurried steps, his coat trailing behind him, as if the chaos didn't concern him in the slightest. Then came the scream. No. It was Supergirl. Ashbourne felt it before he saw it, a massive surge of energy rapidly approaching. He turned his head just in time to see a green beam cutting through the battlefield, aimed directly at him. And just as it was about to hit, a figure flew in front of him. Kara. Time froze for a split second before the beam collided with her. A blinding explosion of pure energy erupted, engulfing both her and Ashbourne. It was brilliant, devastating, a white-green burst that knocked back dust, wind, and even some of the weaker villains. When the light faded and the dust cleared, there was nothing. No Kara, no Ashbourne. Only a crater in the pavement, silent shock, and the horror reflected in the eyes of heroes and civilians alike. Ashbourne stood motionless, taking in the strange world around him. A red sun loomed heavy and oppressive in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the cracked, rocky land. Above, distant planets, Jupiter and Saturn, hung in plain view, their sizes and colors distorted by the unfamiliar atmosphere. The land was barren, lifeless, and hauntingly still. He turned his head slowly. Beside him, lying motionless on the rough ground, was Kara. Her suit was torn, her body bruised and scraped. Ashbourne stared at her for a moment, then sighed heavily. Now he remembered. This was supposed to be Superman's fate. A doomed future, thrown far beyond their time. But somehow, the roles had shifted, and now it was him and Kara who had been cast into this forsaken place. He clenched his jaw, irritation flickering in his eyes. Being dragged into this was frustrating enough. But Kara? Her presence complicated things. If he were alone, he could maneuver freely, faster, without having to worry about showing his powers. But she had thrown herself in front of that beam to shield him. After that, he couldn't just abandon her. no matter how inconvenient it was. His shadow unraveled and slithered across the ground like ink spilled in all directions, scanning and probing the landscape for any sign of civilization. Meanwhile, Ashbourne knelt beside Kara, gently examining her injuries and tending to her wounds with makeshift materials from his coat and what little he had with him. An hour passed. One of his shadows returned with a discovery, the watchtower. Not the present one, a broken remnant, half buried and inert, but unmistakable. It was distant, months away on foot. Ashbourne picked up Kara and vanished in a whisper of shadow. He didn't bring them right to the tower, just close enough. Close enough that when she used her communicator, Savage from this timeline would be able to detect and trace them. It had to look natural. He didn't want to show that he knew too much. Some time passed again. Kara stirred. She opened her eyes to find herself under a low canopy of trees. Gloomy vines and strange plants surrounded her, their colors unnatural, their forms otherworldly, a jungle, but not like any she had seen on Earth. She sat up slowly, her back leaning against a gnarled tree trunk. Bandages were wrapped around her hands and neck. She blinked, then realized something else. She was wearing Ashbourne's coat. A blush crept into her cheeks as she looked down beneath it. Her Kryptonian suit was torn almost to shreds. It didn't take much imagination to realize he had seen her body while tending her wounds. Before her thoughts could go further, a voice came from the side. "You're finally awake." She turned quickly. Ashbourne emerged from between the trees, his steps calm and even. He carried a makeshift basket woven from plant fibers, filled with oddly shaped fruits. He wore only a sleeveless black shirt now, and she recognized the bandages on her body, his torn sleeves. He knelt and placed the basket in front of her. "I found these fruits," he said matter-of-factly. "They look edible." Kara looked at him, then at the fruit. Where are we?" Ashbourne shrugged. "Not Earth. Strange plants, strange oversized insects." Kara blinked. Oversized insects. Ashbourne casually pointed behind her. She turned and looked behind the tree she was leaning on earlier. A few steps away was the grotesque corpse of a massive insect, its armored shell cracked open and governed in green blood. Her eyes widened. "You killed that?" Ashbourne gave a slight nod. He looked at her more seriously now. "Is your communicator still working? Can you reach the League?" Kara touched her ear, then checked the device hidden behind her hair. She nodded. "Yeah, it still has a signal, and it looks like they are not too far from here." Ashbourne gave a slow smile. "Good. We eat and start moving." Kara's eyes drifted toward the basket in front of her, curiosity blooming in their tired depths. She had never seen fruits like these before, strange bulbous, some of them had strange markings. Even the basket itself caught her attention, a tightly woven piece made of unknown fibrous strands and large leaves. She reached forward, placing her hand under the basket to lift it. But as soon as she tried, her brow furrowed in confusion. It was heavy, far heavier than she'd expected. Why is it so heavy?" she asked aloud, puzzled. Ashbourne glanced at her, and then, without a word, pointed skyward. Kara followed his gesture. There it was, the red sun, hanging low like a bleeding wound in the sky. Her heart sank as realization dawned. Her powers, they were gone. The strength, the invulnerability, the flight, all of it had vanished under the red sun's cruel glare. She was powerless, vulnerable, like a human, and this was a strange, unknown world with dangerous giant insects. A sliver of fear crept into her expression. Ashbourne noticed the change in her posture, the flicker of panic in her eyes. His tone softened, not much, but enough. "Relax," he said. "Things will be okay. Once we get to the other League members." Kara inhaled slowly and gave a small nod, a smile pulling at her lips despite the fear. "Yeah? Once we find them, everything will be okay." They ate together in silence. The fruits were bitter and oddly textured, but they filled the emptiness in their stomachs well enough. Afterward, as they prepared to move, Ashbourne unfastened the guard on his left arm and extended it toward Kara. "You'll need this," he said simply. Kara looked at it, surprised. "What?" "No, you should keep it. I'll be fine." "You won't," he replied flatly. "I can defend myself. You can't. Not here. Take it." She hesitated, then reluctantly accepted the arm guard, sliding it over her bruised forearm. The weight was reassuring. She hated how true his words were. They set off toward the signal's direction. the red sun casting long shadows as they walked. Along the way, they encountered creatures, strange, monstrous things that defied earthly logic. Some were insectoid giants with chitinous shells and snarling mandibles, others were animals. Dogs with bone-like spikes coming out of their bodies. Kira couldn't believe how many there were. And she couldn't believe how easily Ashbourne dealt with them. He moved like a wraith, every attack swift and deadly. The blue dagger he drew from behind his back glowed faintly. It was clearly another magical dagger. Each strike was clean, silent. She watched in awe as he dispatched beasts she wouldn't have been able to even run from in her current state. By the time night fell, they had traveled miles. Ashbourne built a fire, using materials he scavenged with ease. He even roasted meat from one of the creatures he had killed, though Kara hesitated to eat it. Hunger eventually won. The two of them sat near the fire, its glow illuminating their faces. "Thanks," Kara said suddenly, her voice low but genuine, "for everything. I wouldn't have survived an hour here on my own." Ashbourne didn't look at her. "You are here because of me," he said simply. Then his voice turned colder. "And what you did, back there, was foolish." Kara blinked. "What?" "You should have never tried to block that beam," he said, eyes fixed on the fire. "I thought you were going to die," she replied, her tone tightening. "I was just trying to save you." "I didn't ask for your help," Ashbourne said firmly. "And now it was clearly the wrong thing to do. If something like this happens again, don't throw yourself in front of danger for me. I don't appreciate that kind of behavior." The words hit harder than any punch. Kara's shoulders slumped, her head lowering as she responded quietly, "I won't do it again." Ashbourne didn't respond. He watched the flames crackle, his expression unreadable. This was the DC universe, a place of miracles and monsters. It wasn't unheard of for things like this to happen, but Cora had almost died for someone like him, someone who was far stronger than he let the world see, far stronger than her or any of her social circle, someone who hid behind the facade of a normal human and chose to live a laid-back life. She shouldn't be in harm's way for someone like him. As the fire dimmed and the sounds of the jungle settled into a quiet hum, Ashbourne stood and turned his gaze toward the dense, dark horizon. "Get some sleep," he said, without turning. "I'll keep watch tonight." Kara, still tired from the day's march, gave a silent nod. She curled up near the fire, still wearing Ashbourne's coat, and drifted off to sleep. The next morning, she awoke to the gentle aroma of something cooking. The sky above remained the same crimson hue, but the temperature was cooler now, in the early hours. Kara stretched, groaning slightly from sore muscles and stiff joints. She looked around and blinked in surprise. Next to her was a fresh batch of fruits, neatly stacked, and over the fire, sizzling on a flat stone, were what looked like eggs being fried. Ashbourne crouched nearby, focused on the fire. Without even glancing at her, he said, "Good morning." Kara rubbed her eyes and smiled faintly. "Morning? Where did you find eggs?" "There are birds around," Ashbourne replied, flipping one of the eggs with the tip of a stick. "Not chickens, but close enough. I collected these and more fruit before the sun came up." Kara sat up and nodded silently, somewhat amazed. She'd barely lasted a day, and here he was preparing a full breakfast. They ate in relative silence, the food still strange, but acceptable. Once finished, they packed up their supplies and continued onward, heading toward the signal they'd been tracking since yesterday. The terrain grew rougher, the jungle thinning and giving way to charred rock and metallic debris. By noon, they crested a hill, and Kara stopped dead in her tracks. Her heart dropped. Before them lay the ruins of the watchtower, scattered across the scorched earth in broken pieces. Twisted metal, broken support beams. It was all there, collapsed like a corpse picked apart by time. Kara stepped forward slowly, disbelief and fear clouding her face. No. Ashbourne's expression remained calm as he stood beside her. The creaking remains of the watchtower groaned softly under Kara's hesitant steps. Ashbourne followed behind silently, his eyes scanning the place. Inside, the structure was a ghost of its former glory. Dark corridors, shattered panels, dust layering every surface like ancient ash. Kara's face twisted with fear and despair as she rushed to the central console. Her fingers danced over the cracked glass, bringing up faint screens, blinking red with warning after warning. Desperate, she searched for answers. But all she found was silence. A mechanical voice crackled to life. "Power at critical level. Entering sleep mode in 60 seconds. No, Kara slammed her fist into the terminal. What happened here? Ashbourne said nothing. His eyes weren't on the dead console, but staring into the dark. Why wasn't Savage here? Shouldn't he be lurking around the watchtower? Could it be that he didn't pick up on their signal? Silently, he extended his shadows, ordering them to slither across the base and fan out across the land. Kura turned to him, her voice trembling. What should we do? We're all alone here. Ashbourne turned slightly toward her. We rest. Then we search. We'll look for intelligent life. There has to be something around here. Kara gave a faint nod. Then entering sleep mode, date 77-34 AC. The system's voice echoed like a final breath before death. Kara's body went rigid. Did you hear that? She whispered. Ashbourne gave a small nod. If it's correct, the beam didn't send us to another world. We're still on Earth, but it sent us forward 75,000 years. Her eyes filled with tears. Not again, not again. Ashbourne blinked. Her voice cracked with pain he didn't expect. First Krypton, and now Earth. For a brief moment, he understood. She hadn't moved on from Krypton, and now she believed she was reliving the same tragedy, watching another home fall into oblivion. At that moment, one of his shadows had found him, Vandal Savage, tending a peaceful farm. He was only a day away from their current location. Ashbourne placed a firm hand on Kara's shoulder. We got here, we can get back. The way in must have a way out. Let's rest for a little, then we'll search. Kara didn't reply. Instead, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, crying softly into his chest. Ashbourne stood still, tempted to teleport them directly to Savage and end this heavy moment. An hour later, they set out again. Kara walked closer than usual, her red, swollen eyes casting glances at Ashbourne every few steps, as if afraid he'd vanish too. Ashbourne understood. This world had broken her walls, and she feared losing everything again. The next day, they reached the outskirts of a broken city, or what was left of it, Metropolis. Kara slowed down, her eyes moved across the ruins, skyscrapers collapsed into mountains of steel and concrete. What stopped her, what broke her again, was the shattered SIPS emblem embedded into the ground, cracked and crumbling. She fell to her knees and wept. Ashbourne gave her a moment before gently urging her forward. They walked in silence through the empty graveyard of a city, until they reached something strange. A pristine building. Surrounded by cultivated plants and neatly trimmed trees, the place stood, like a sore thumb, in a world that had been swallowed by time. Not abandoned, maintained. Ashbourne narrowed his eyes. This place doesn't look like the rest. Someone's living here. Kara wiped her eyes. We should be careful. They might not be friendly. Relax, Ashbourne replied. Things will be okay. We're not alone anymore. As if on cue, the front door opened. A man walked out, tall, composed, dressed in immaculate black. His expression shifted from calm to startled. Kara took a step forward, her eyes narrowing. Savage! What are you doing here? The man's eyes widened. A chuckle escaped his lips, low and disbelieving. Well, I never thought I'd see another human face again. Not after all these tens of thousands of years. Ashbourne's eyes flicked from the neat fields to the stoic face of Vandal Savage. A wry smile tugged at his lips. Being an immortal, he said casually, is quite the curse, isn't it? He paused for a moment, then continued. So, care to tell us what we missed these past 75,000 years? How did the world end like this? Savage let out a long, heavy sigh, one that carried the weight of millennia. This is my fault, he admitted. I created a device to control gravitational force, a device meant to help me become the master of the world. But instead, I broke the world. Everything unraveled. Civilization collapsed, and I've been alone ever since. What about the Justice League? They would have never allowed that to happen, Kara asked with narrowed eyes. Savage showed a nostalgic and sad look as he replied, True, they tried to stop me, but I was prepared and killed them all. His words shocked Kara, but before she could say anything, Savage continued, his eyes flicking between the two of them. Who are you? Ashbourne replied, Ashbourne Black. And this is Supergirl. At the mention of her name, something flickered in Savage's eyes, recognition buried deep and long forgotten. So Toyman, that fool, created a beam to send things into the future, he murmured. He didn't realize what he created to the very end. Seems to be the case, Ashbourne replied. Savage straightened, shaking off the haze of old memories. Forgive my poor manners, he said, gesturing toward the door. Please, come inside. Ashbourne stepped forward without hesitation, but Kara reached out and grabbed his hand. "We can't trust him," she whispered, eyes locked on Savage. "If what he said is true, this is all his fault." Ashbourne glanced at her with a small smirk. "He's been alone for 75,000 years, Kara. I think he's dying to talk to someone." Savage glanced back and chuckled. "You're surprisingly calm about all of this, Ashbourne." Ashbourne grinned. "Panic and anger are pointless, and having nerves of steel helps." He gently tugged Kara's hand, pulling her to follow him. She relented, but the suspicion never left her face. Her eyes stayed fixed on Savage's every move. Ashbourne, on the other hand, acted like he was meeting an old friend. As they stepped into the pristine home, filled with handmade furniture, towering shelves of books, and relics from the ancient world, he asked, "So what have you been doing all this time?" Savage's face lit up, eager to speak after so long. "I rediscovered agriculture," he said, leading them inside. "Built new irrigation systems from scratch. Read every book I could find. Multiple times. I even built a ship to leave Earth. But I stayed." "Why?" Ashbourne asked. "I thought maybe this was my punishment," Savage said, his voice quieter now. "Endless solitude. Time to think, to reflect. My past self, what he did, how he thought. I've come to hate him." Ashbourne listened with a soft smile, nodding, occasionally asking questions that drew even more stories from the ancient man. Kara watched silently from the edge of the room, arms crossed, her blood boiled with every word. How could Ashbourne smile? How could he talk to this man like they were old companions? Like none of this mattered. After a while, Savage stood. "Please make yourselves comfortable. I'll fetch some vegetables and fruit. We'll eat together." Once he disappeared through the back door, Kara turned on Ashbourne, her anger bursting free. "How can you talk with him like that?" she hissed. "How can you smile like nothing happened? Everything is gone. Everyone is dead. Even Savage shows more sorrow than you. And you look like you're enjoying this." Ashbourne's smile faded. He looked at her silently for a long moment. Then he said quietly but firmly, "Just because you see a smile, don't think you know what's going on underneath." His tone sharpened as he continued. "A smile is a tool, Kara. It inspires your friends, keeps your enemies guessing, and most of all, it ensures that no matter what comes your way, you're the one in control." Kara blinked, caught off guard. Her anger fizzled under the weight of his words. For a long moment, she stood in silence, staring at the floor. "I'm sorry," she finally said. "I won't do that again." Ashbourne's smile returned. "It's fine. You're stressed. Anyone would be, given everything." She nodded slowly, still processing, as quiet settled between them once more. Savage returned not long after, holding a basket filled with colorful vegetables and some tuberous roots that had clearly been cultivated with care. "I'll prepare lunch," he said with a small grin, "and I'll make sure it's something you'll both enjoy. We are quite lucky. We are getting a meal prepared by the undisputed best cook for the last 75,000 years. Ashbourne quipped. Savage chuckled lightly. As Savage began chopping the ingredients with practiced hands, Ashbourne tilted his head curiously. "So, tell me, 75,000 years is a long time. Did you ever figure out a way to fix this place? All that solitude must have sparked some ideas." Savage's motion slowed for a moment. "I did. For a while, I even worked on a time machine." Kara's eyes widened slightly. Ashbourne leaned in with interest. "But I stopped," Savage continued. "Once I realized how pointless it was." He paused, glancing between them. "But now, with the two of you here, saving this world might not be as impossible as I once thought." Ashbourne squinted, reading between the lines. "Do you have a plan?" Savage turned, the ghost of a smile on his face. "Yes, the two of you could repopulate the Earth." There was a beat of silence. Kara's cheeks turned a faint shade of pink, her eyes darting away. Ashbourne's face registered brief confusion, then disbelief. "That's your first idea?" he asked, blinking. "You mentioned a time machine, and immediately after it, you want to start a breeding program." Savage shrugged. "It's a practical thought. Humanity can continue." Ashbourne held up a hand. "Let's shelve the new generation talk for now. Let's rewind. If you can create a time machine, why is it really pointless?" Savage stirred the pot over the fire, speaking more casually now. "Because I can't return to a time where I already exist. That's the paradox." Ashbourne gave a pointed look. "You do realize that we're not from this time, right? If you could send us back, we are the variables. We can stop this before you screw it all up." Savage froze, the spoon hanging in midair. Slowly, he turned to Ashbourne, eyes wide with realization. "You're right," he whispered. Ashbourne grinned. Living alone for that long isn't an excuse to fill your head with breeding thoughts. Savage let out a bark of laughter, the weight on his shoulders seeming to lift for the first time in ages. "You're right," he said again, more alive than they had yet seen him. "After we eat, I'll dig up my old notes. I'll start working on the time machine again." This time his voice was charged with energy, like a man reborn. Kara looked to Ashbourne, stunned, hope battling with disbelief in her eyes. Ashbourne met her gaze, the smallest of smiles tugging at the corners of his lips. "Looks like we have a way back after all," he said. The week passed in a blur. Savage, driven by renewed purpose, worked day and night to complete the time machine. On the 7th day, Savage stood in front of the machine with a proud look on his face. "It's done," he said, voice nearly shaking from excitement. "Let's turn it on." Together, the three gathered around the sleek, oddly elegant machine. As Savage flipped the switch, a deep hum filled the air, followed by a series of crackling sparks, and then silence. The lights dimmed, the machine sat still, lifeless. Kara's joy crumbled into dust. "Why isn't it working?" she asked, eyes wide with panic. "Why?" Savage rubbed the back of his neck, sighing. "The damn powering this place doesn't generate enough energy. Not even close." Ashbourne stepped forward, expression calm as ever. "So it needs more power. Got any suggestions on where we can find it?" Savage furrowed his brow. "About 30 years ago, a group of evolved cockroaches broke into my vault and stole a 0-point power generator. That's the only source on Earth, strong enough to power this thing." Ashbourne raised a brow. "So, we need to hunt cockroaches." Kara blinked. "Why not just create another generator?" Savage turned to her, his face dead serious. "That would take me 50 years. Care to wait?" Kara's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Her shoulders slumped in silence. Ashbourne gave a decisive nod. "All right then, let's go get your generator." Savage nodded as well, though he looked slightly concerned. "Their nest is dangerous. More dangerous than you can imagine." Ashbourne calmly replied, "That's fine." Then Ashbourne's gaze moved to Kara and said, "Once the two of us return with the generator, we go back. Don't panic, we are almost done." But Kara's face changed. She tensed. "Wait, you're going to the cockroach nest with Savage? Alone?" Ashbourne nodded. Kara stepped forward, voice firm. "Absolutely not. I'm coming with you." Ashbourne met her eyes and shook his head. "No, you have no powers, and you'd bring more harm than good if something went wrong." "You know I'm right." Kara clenched her fists, wanting to protest, but after a moment her shoulders fell. "Fine," she said bitterly, retreating to the living room of Savage's home. She watched the door as they left, worry filling her chest. High above the forest floor, Ashbourne and Savage rode on the backs of giant dragonflies, wings humming in rhythmic pulses. The air grew thicker as they neared a cratered valley cloaked in fungus and decay, the cockroach nest. As they hovered above, Ashbourne stood, peering at the dark abyss below. "Lower yourself," Savage hissed. "They're aggressive and deadly. If they see us—" But Ashbourne raised a hand. "Whatever happens down there, no word of it reaches Kara." Savage blinked. "What?" The air shifted. The earth beneath them darkened as if the sun had been swallowed. From Ashbourne's feet, shadows spilled out like a tsunami. They surged across the land, flowing into the valley like liquid night. From within the abyss of shadow, figures rose, shapes that moved like whispers, silent and dreadful, ready to obey. Savage turned slowly, eyes wide. You have superpowers." Ashbourne didn't look at him. "I enjoy my laid-back life. If the world knew what I could really do, they'd never leave me alone. It's annoying. And remember," Ashbourne added, his voice low and calm, "Kara must never know." Savage, still stunned, gave a slow smile. Not a word would reach her. The shadows surged forward, and the hunt began. Kara sat in the quiet of Savage's home, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees, as she rested her chin on them. The room, though warm and clean, felt like a prison. Time crawled painfully slow. Her thoughts were loud, too loud to escape. What if they fail? What if they never come back? What if I'm stuck here forever? Her grip tightened. She tried to push the thoughts away, tried to believe Ashbourne would return, He won't leave her all alone in this forsaken place. But this was different. This time, he went into danger without her. And she hated how helpless that made her feel. Her gaze stayed fixed on the door, as if staring hard enough would summon him back. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like days. The heavy silence pressed against her chest until it became hard to breathe. And just as tears welled in her eyes, just as her hope began to fray, the door creaked open. Kara's head shot up. Savage stepped through, his arms cradling a glowing sphere that pulsed like a miniature sun. Its light cast soft golden shadows across the walls. And right behind him, Ashbourne. Kara bolted to her feet, eyes wide. You succeeded, Savage chuckled, stepping aside to let Ashbourne in fully. Thanks to him, he said, nodding at the man behind him, things went easier than I expected. He was more than I imagined. Ashbourne gave Kara a small smile, told you not to panic. Kara's breath caught in her throat, not from worry this time, but from joy and overwhelming relief. We're really going back? Savage placed the glowing generator beside the time machine, the soft hum of power already starting to resonate through the floor. Yes, he said with certainty. Now we send you two back to your timeline. Kara nodded, her eyes shining. The despair that had weighed her down only moments ago was already being swept away by the growing light, both from the generator and from hope. The funeral of Ashbourne Black and Supergirl was unlike any other the world had seen. Held in the heart of Metropolis, people from all walks of life gathered under a somber sky, united in grief and gratitude. They came to honor two great individuals. Mourners surrounded Superman, offering their condolences in quiet reverence. Many were there for Kara, grateful for the countless lives she'd saved, the hope she'd inspired. But even more had come for Ashbourne. His employees filled the front rows of faces marked by tears, silent stares, and memories too fresh to fade. Some cried quietly, others openly wept, unable to comprehend the loss of the man who had given them purpose and a second chance. On one side stood a somber collection of ex-villains, most of whom had once been feared and reviled, but who now looked broken. They weren't there as criminals, they were there as mourners, grieving not just a leader, but a friend. To many of them, Ashbourne had been more than a boss. He had been the only one to believe in them, the only one who saw them as people. Rix clung tightly to Ace, the girl standing stoically with her arms crossed. Her eyes were dry, she spoke calmly. My adopted father is going to come back, she said. I trust him. Rex let out a sob and hugged her even tighter. Those around them lowered their eyes, heartbroken. Just as she had found someone who treated her like family, without fear or judgment, she had lost him. But the truth is, she believed he was fine. She knew what he truly is. Lex Luthor and Amanda Waller stood to the side, their presence unexpected but not unwelcome. They had come not to manipulate or connive, but to honor their partner's memory. Lex respected Ashbourne's brilliance. Waller respected the way he conducted his business. When the final words were spoken, the crowds dispersed. Some silent, some weeping, all carrying the weight of uncertainty. What would the future hold now? A week later, Superman still felt the ache in his chest. Metropolis looked the same, but it felt emptier. Kara's absence echoed through the skies. And Ashbourne, he had been a man unlike any other. He should have been here, they both should have, but he failed them that day. If it weren't for the Flash and Wonder Woman intervening that day, Superman might have killed Toyman in his fury. He couldn't let go, not yet. But as he flew high above the city, a shimmer of white light flickered in his periphery. He hovered in place, eyes narrowing as the light coalesced into a spiraling portal, brilliant in gold, streaked with black and white. Civilians on the streets below backed away, unsure of what they were witnessing. Superman flew closer, then froze midair. Two figures stepped out of the light. Kara, Ashbourne. For a moment he didn't move. He didn't breathe. Then he bolted forward, faster than a thought. Kara's eyes lit up as she saw him. Kal-El, she called out, her voice breaking into a wide, relieved smile. I'm so glad to see you again. Superman caught her in a tight embrace, holding her like he'd never let go. I thought you were dead, he whispered. Ashbourne stepped out from the edge of the portal as he looked around. How long have we been gone? Superman, still stunned, replied, 2 weeks. We even had your funerals. Ashbourne sighed, rubbing his forehead. Uncle Rex won't let me walk away from this in peace. Savage should have sent us 2 weeks earlier. Superman blinked, confused. What? happened to you two? Ashbourne gestured toward Kara. She'll fill you in. I, on the other hand, have a lecture to endure, and probably a few angry people to face. Without another word, he walked away toward Shadow Corp. Superman turned to Kara. She smiled tiredly and said, "It's a long story." The news of Ashbourne Black and Supergirl's miraculous return spread like wildfire. The world embraced Supergirl with open arms, cheering her heroism, welcoming her home as if no time had passed. Her smile, her warmth, it was exactly what people needed in the wake of the tragedy they thought they had suffered. Ashbourne, however, received a different kind of welcome. Where Kara was met with hugs and celebration, Ashbourne was met with lectures. Concerned friends, ex-villains, and even employees approached him with frowns and furrowed brows, all echoing the same sentiment: what you did was reckless. You should have protected yourself. All he could do was stand there silently, listening, nodding, accepting their words. He understood they cared. Fortunately, life moved on. Things returned to a semblance of normal until they didn't. Late one evening, while seated at his desk reading reports and sipping tea, a soft knock echoed, not at the door, but at the window. Ashbourne raised a brow, turned around, and paused. Hovering outside was a woman. She looked exactly like Kara, but older. Her features were more defined, her eyes sharper, her expression laced with confident amusement. Her blonde hair was cut short and neat, and her attire, a bold swimsuit-like outfit with a suggestive chest window, only enhanced the look. She smiled and waved, then tapped the window again. Ashbourne sighed and pressed a button on his desk. With a soft hiss, the window opened, and the mysterious woman floated inside, her presence commanding. "So," she said with a smirk, "do you like the new look?" Ashbourne tilted his head slightly. "I don't recall meeting you before. Who might you be?" The woman floated closer, her voice playful. "Can't you recognize me?" Of course he could, more than she thought. But he had planned on playing the ignorant guy. Without a word, he picked up his phone and dialed a number. The woman looked puzzled, watching him curiously. When the call picked up, Ashbourne asked, "Hi, did you clone Supergirl into an older, hotter version?" The woman's eyes widened. On the other end of the line, Amanda Waller's voice came through. Surprised, "How did you know?" Ashbourne replied dryly, "If I may suggest, you should change her outfit. The cleavage window is not needed and inappropriate." Then he hung up. He turned to the woman. "So you're a clone of Supergirl and they don't know you're here. Why are you visiting me, Miss Clone?" The woman opened her mouth, then shut it again. This guy really was as sharp and strange as the rumor suggested. Finally, she asked, "Aren't you afraid to be alone with me?" Ashbourne shrugged. "I have no reason to be." She stared at him for a moment, then laughed lightly. "You really are something." Her eyes flicked to the drinks cabinet. Ashbourne noticed. "Forgive me, I've been a terrible host." He stood and walked over, pouring her a drink without breaking eye contact. She accepted the glass with amusement. "So," Ashbourne asked again, "how should I help you, Miss Clone?" "I don't like being called that," she said, taking a sip. "My name is Galatea, but I prefer to be called T.A. Tea it is." She downed the drink in one go, then stepped closer to him. "Supergirl is fixated on you, so I came to see for myself. And I admit I like what I see already." Ashbourne tilted his head slightly. "Thank you," he said. His curiosity piqued. "Where is this going?" he wondered. Galatea reached out and gently held his chin with 2 fingers. "I already like you, and I'm here to have some fun." She licked her lips. Ashbourne's smile didn't waver. "I see. I've charmed both the original and the clone. Or, are you trying to prove you're better than the one I rejected?" Galatea froze, her playful smirk fading. "Careful what you say," she warned. "I can be dangerous." Ashbourne chuckled softly. "You've got it backward. You should be careful, because you're here alone with me." Suddenly, Galatea's body weakened. Her knees buckled. She looked down. Ashbourne's hand was holding a glowing green dagger. She didn't understand where this dagger came from. Still, she stumbled back, but he grabbed her chin and kept her close. Her strength drained by the second. She dropped to her knees, her breath shallow, her limbs unsteady. Ashbourne knelt in front of her, calmly sheathing the dagger. With a soft, almost tender touch, he caressed her cheek, his voice smooth and dangerous. "Being alone with me is dangerous, T," Ashbourne said with a smile. Galatea stared at him with a panicked look and a flicker of fear in her eyes. Meeting Ashbourne's gaze, she knew, truly knew, that she was entirely at his mercy. Her knees still weak from the kryptonite exposure, her breath uneven, she could do nothing but wait for his next move. Ashbourne, however, did nothing. Without a word, he stood up and walked back to his desk. His tone was calm, casual. There's still sunlight left for you to charge. Leave once you can fly again. Gadatea blinked, surprised. Warily, she pushed herself up slightly and looked at him. Aren't you going to do anything to me? Ashbourne raised a brow and turned his head slightly toward her. What are you expecting exactly? His voice wasn't mocking, just honestly confused. I don't see a reason to kill a person for being flirtatious or jealous. He paused, then tilted his head. Unless you're into rape play. Seriously, what are they teaching you? First the inappropriate dress, and now this. Her jaw dropped. First, the fact he called her a person stunned her. And then, that question, her brain short-circuited for a second. When exactly did she imply she was into that kind of stuff? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, and then decided, nope, not addressing that part. Instead, she focused on the word that really stood out. Do you think I'm a person? She asked quietly, but seriously. Ashbourne didn't look up from the desk he had returned to. I don't like those cliché scripts where someone says a few words and suddenly the other falls in love. He glanced her way and added offhandedly. But yes, I think you're a person. You can speak, think, feel jealousy, even. Doesn't matter if you came from a womb or a lab tube. He paused again, but I also think you're inferior to the original. Kara has a clear will. She's trying to find herself, define what she wants. You don't seem to have any of that. Silence hung in the room for a few long seconds. Galadia's face shifted rapidly. First annoyed, then a smile began to form, and finally an expression of raw anger. I take it back, she snapped. I don't like you one bit. You're the worst human I've ever seen. She turned on her heel, walked to the open window behind him, and with shaky control over her body, flew away into the sky. Ashbourne didn't move. Once she was gone, he simply reached over and pressed the button on his desk, the window sliding closed behind her, with a soft hiss. The idea that Cadmus might create Galatea in this world had always been in the back of his mind. He always knew of the possibility, but for her to seek him out like that out of the blue, it was unexpected. Ashbourne wondered if this Galatea will have the same fate as the one he remembered. She was free to resist and choose, but she chose to enslave herself. Ashbourne shook his head and sighed. He pushed the meeting to the back of his mind. Lately, Kara hadn't been sleeping well. Each time she closed her eyes, she was greeted with disturbing images, visions of herself doing terrible things. In her dreams, she'd fly through cities not to save, but to destroy. She'd strike down innocent people, crush through buildings, and leave ruin in her wake. Her hands in those dreams were stained with blood. She'd wake up sweating, gasping for air, heart pounding like she had truly been there. The dread clung to her like a second skin. Was she somehow doing these things in her sleep? Was she being used without her knowledge? But none of those nightmares compared to the most recent one. In this dream, she wasn't hurting strangers, she was going after Ashbourne. And what chilled her more than anything was how he looked at her. He didn't recognize her as Kara, but as someone else. Missy Clone, she murmured. His words echoed in her waking mind with sharp clarity. It wasn't just a dream. It felt too real. And worse, his acknowledgement struck a nerve. Because in the dream, he made it clear she was better than the clone. He understood her. He saw her not just as Supergirl, but as someone trying to carve her own identity. Someone trying to find a purpose. And yet, I don't like those cliché scripts, he had said. That line haunted her just as much as the rest. Didn't that exactly describe her? Ashbourne always saw through things, saw through people. If the dream was more than a nightmare, more than random neurons firing, then perhaps she has some link to this clone, and Ashbourne already knew who was behind it all, or at least figured it out. Kara sat up in her room. She couldn't keep this to herself anymore. These dreams, these visions, they may not be dreams. They were visions from someone else, a clone, and the Justice League had to know. Superman stood in the center of the Watchtower briefing room, arms crossed, his face hard with concern as he listened to Kara recount her troubling dreams. The idea of someone cloning her was disturbing enough, but the fact that Ashbourne made an appearance in her dream calmly identifying the clone weighed heavily on his mind. He wasn't involved, Kara emphasized again, her voice shaky but resolute. But he knew, like instantly, he wasn't surprised. Superman ran a hand over his face, his fingers pressing into his temples. We need to check with him. If he knows something, we have to hear it. He sighed. I'm not looking forward to stepping into his office again. He seems to carry kryptonite like it's candy, Wonder Woman said dryly. But if this dream has any truth to it, we have to get to the bottom of it, even if it's by sword, if needed. Superman gave her a warning glance. No violence, we don't even understand what this Shadow Monarch is yet, and Ashbourne already knew our real identities. I don't want to end up in court with him again. I'll go, Diana offered. He seems to enjoy provoking you, Kala. Maybe I'll have better luck. I'll tag along, Martian Manhunter said from the corner, his tone neutral but serious. Kara straightened. I'm going too. She looked between them. If there really is a clone of me, I need to know. Superman gave a silent nod. No one objected. She deserved answers. At that moment, the doors whooshed open and Flash skidded to a stop inside. You're late, Batman said flatly, not even turning his head. I know, but you need to see this, Flash said, already tapping away at the Watchtower terminal. It's insane. The others gathered around as the large screen lit up, showing a trailer complete with booming music and dramatic narration. The title read, Ultraman. The screen flickered with images of a man dressed in a costume, blue cape, inverted Superman color scheme. An exaggerated U emblazoned on his chest, he soared through the sky with the speed of sound, smashed through steel with a smile, his eyes saw through objects and shot lasers to make rocks in molten lava, and posed heroically in front of the American flag. But the story wasn't his, it was about the CIA, as they desperately and hilariously tried to assassinate a journalist who was so good at his job that he pissed off all the wrong people. This journalist just wanted to write good articles and pet his dog, but secretly was none other than Ultraman. Every attempt ended in spectacular failure. One scene showed a sniper rifle melting in the sun. Another had an agent slipping on a banana peel moments before firing. With each failure, the CIA grew more desperate, paranoid, and ridiculous. Are they serious? Kara muttered. Superman squinted at the screen. The way the hero moved, the glasses, the job at a major newspaper. This is me, he said with a groan. It's a parody of me. Ultraman is definitely you, John confirmed. Flash pointed at the screen. And guess who's producing it? The screen showed the production logo, Shadow Corp. Superman's groan deepened. I'm going with you to Ashbourne. I have to stop him from making this show. Think he's mocking you on purpose? Diana asked. Perhaps, or it might be him warning you to act against him, that man added. Kara couldn't help but chuckle slightly, despite her unease. The sun had barely broken the horizon when Ashbourne stepped into his office, a fresh cup of coffee in hand, his stride relaxed, and a slight smile played on his lips. Inside, 4 costumed figures waited for him with varying degrees of patience and tension. He walked past them casually, not sparing a second glance, and simply said, Good morning, as if greeting a passing colleague. Then he made his way to his desk, sat down, and took a slow sip of his coffee. Wonder Woman narrowed her eyes, arms crossed tightly. You don't seem surprised to see us. Ashbourne placed his cup gently on the desk and met her gaze with that same smile. I had a feeling you'd visit, and I suspect I know the reason, but go ahead, surprise me. Her tone sharpened. Then I won't waste time. Who created Supergirl's clone, and what do you know about it? Ashbourne leaned back in his chair, his fingers lacing together in front of him. Why do you think she has a clone, and why would I know about something like this? At random? No. Before Wonder Woman could respond, Kara stepped forward. Her expression was conflicted, but her voice was steady. I've been having dreams of doing things I would never do, hurting people, killing, and in the last one, I saw you meeting the clone. Ashbourne's eyes drifted toward her, still smiling. So you two share a link, he said. That's why she came to me? Like you were affected by her. She was influenced by you. That explains her strange decision-making. Still strange, though. Why do you have such a connection? Kara's heart pounded, but she felt a small sense of relief. If Ashbourne wasn't surprised, if he recognized the clone, then maybe her dreams weren't some buried side of herself. So, who cloned me? And why? Ashbourne took another sip of coffee and stared into the dark liquid for a moment. That's for you to figure out, he said finally. I won't share the details of what's going on, but I will tell you this. The clone isn't your enemy, but she's not your friend either. Her goals are similar to yours, peace, order, but her methods differ. Killing is a tool she's more than willing to use. Wonder Woman's fists clenched. This isn't something we can overlook. Someone cloned Supergirl, weaponized her. They're using her to kill. We need to know who and why. Ashbourne looked at her with a calm, amused smile. You won't find your answers here. Diana took a step forward, her voice rising. Can't you see the threat she poses? What if they create more? What if they abuse that power? Ashbourne tilted his head slightly, amusement glinting in his eye. And what are you doing with the watchtower? Assembling heroes, building a force of power in orbit. That's fine, but someone else doing it is suddenly unacceptable. That's awfully hypocritical, don't you think? Don't compare us to them, Diana snapped. We have a noble mission. We act in the open, not from the shadows. Ashbourne chuckled, his gaze sharp now. A princess from Themyscira lecturing me on nobility and transparency. How ironic, save those words for someone who doesn't know what your precious island has done in the shadows. Diana's jaw clenched, her eyes narrowing as she stepped forward. I won't allow you to insult my home. Before she could go further, Superman stepped up and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Diana, his tone was firm but calm. Ashbourne, let's keep things civil. There's no need to reduce this to accusations and insults. Ashbourne was quiet for a moment, then he leaned forward, one eyebrow arched as a quiet laugh escaped his lips. You don't know, do you? He asked, eyes locked on Diana. You're the princess, and you don't know? He leaned back in his chair and laughed harder. Now that's funny. Diana's eyes narrowed into thin slits. What are you accusing my people of? The Amazons are righteous, upright, something you clearly lack. Ashbourne laughed, not a scoff, not a smirk, but an actual full-bodied laugh, as if she'd just told him the most absurd joke he'd ever heard. You really believe that? He asked, voice low and amused. You still think your noble warriors are the shining beacon of purity? Let me paint you a picture, princess. Your righteous warriors. They attack ships, cargo, military, doesn't matter. They take the men for breeding, then kill them when they're done. The women, if any, are often left to die. Then they sail back to their paradise, where newborn girls are raised into warriors. And the boys, they're traded for weapons. Hephaestus has been making deals for a very long time. Your lasso was bought by one of your poor brothers. Diana's lips parted slightly, but no words came. Ashbourne's voice dropped, colder now. When you go back, look into it. You'll find what you don't want to. Your island keeps its filth in the shadows. Just because you don't see the blood doesn't mean it's not there. He paused, and then smirked. And while we're tearing down delusions, you weren't carved from soil and given life. That's a story they told to make it all sound less tribal. You came into the world through the old hip dance ritual, and your divine power, because the male donor was Zeus. The heavy silence followed. Superman looked between them, tense and ready. John frowned, realizing things could explode at any moment. Kara stared, stunned. Sure enough, Diana exploded. With a furious cry, she shoved Superman aside and drew her sword in one smooth motion. I will not allow slander and shame to stain my people. Ashbourne's hand moved like lightning. He opened the drawer of his desk, pulled a strange-looking pistol, and fired without hesitation. The crack of the gunshot echoed through the office like thunder. Diana knew bullets are harmless against her. She didn't even raise her bracers this time, expecting to bounce. But the bullet didn't bounce. It tore through her shoulder, a clean, sharp wound that forced a cry of shock and pain from her lips. She stumbled, staring at the blood staining her armor, wide-eyed. You are in my office, behave, Ashbourne said with the same smile. Diana crumpled to her knees, her sword slipping from her hand with a metallic clatter. Superman was already by her side, catching her before she hit the floor. Diana, he called out, but her lips refused to move. He cradled her carefully, his eyes scanning her body. Then he saw it. Black lines were threading out from the wound in her shoulder, spreading across her skin like creeping vines. His expression hardened as he looked up at Ashbourne. What was in that pistol? Ashbourne casually spun the weapon on his finger, unbothered. The bullets are laced with a strong paralytic compound extracted from a unique ant. Painful, yes, but non-lethal. She won't be able to move or speak for at least a week. You poisoned her, Superman growled. I disabled her, Ashbourne corrected. Big difference. She came at me with a blade. I just responded faster and was less lethal. He examined the pistol again, almost admiring it. I keep this around for types like that, too much power wrapped up in blind righteousness and delusions. She's that old and still doesn't know what her people actually do. Worse, she still thinks she was born from dirt. Jean stepped forward. How do you even know that? Even Wonder Woman didn't. Ashbourne shrugged. I have my sources, what they are and how I get them is of no consequence to you. Superman looked down at Diana, her face frozen in silent fury, her breath shallow but steady. Then he looked back at Ashbourne. Do you always have to provoke people into fighting you? Ashbourne gave a lazy smirk. No, just the hypocrite assholes I don't like. She and her entire island fall under that umbrella. Superman clenched his jaw, stood up with Diana in his arms, and pivoted toward the door, choosing to de-escalate this time. Fine, but stop that TV show. You can't just parade our identities and slap parody on it like it's harmless. Ashbourne blinked. What TV show? He looked genuinely puzzled, which made Superman pause mid-stride. You're telling me you don't know about Ultraman? It is produced by Shadowcrop. Ashbourne shook his head. Never heard of it. I don't review or deal with anything in the entertainment sector. I do watch that stuff and I don't like spoilers. Superman's expression darkened with something colder than anger, concern. Then who does? Someone's using your company and they know everything. Ashbourne had a thoughtful look on his face. My daughter Ace. I told her to review scripts and pilots, greenlight anything that caught her eye or suggest changes. Letting her do that should help develop common sense. How bad are we talking? Superman looked shaken for a moment, then began explaining the contents of the show. Ultraman, the ridiculous assassination plots, the journalist alter ego, the color-reversed suit. Ashbourne actually laughed. That script is gold. Honestly, keep it running. Satire that sharp deserves to live. No, Superman said firmly. It's too accurate. It needs to be taken down, or at least changed. Ashbourne sighed. Fine. I'll have something done about it and reiterate with Ace what to not do. Superman hesitated. Does Ace know about my identity? Ashbourne looked him in the eye. Yes. On the day she was losing her powers, she glimpsed through my memories. She knows a significant portion of what I know. The room fell silent. Superman for a moment groaned out of sheer frustration. Dealing with Lex Luthor was easier. Lex was an outright villain. He had schemes, agendas, and crimes. You could wrap your head around him, but Ashbourne, he was an enigma, annoying jerk at worst. He didn't break laws, barely put in effort, and still managed to be the most frustrating presence Superman had ever encountered. At least with Lex, he could punch something. Superman inhaled slowly, steadying himself. Talk to her, he said, eyes back on Ashbourne. We need to know if she shared our identities with anyone. Ashbourne didn't even blink. She didn't. I already had included your identities in the do not share list. Superman raised an eyebrow. And the TV show? Ashbourne gave a half shrug. That's why I want to teach her common sense. She probably thought parody meant it was okay. Honestly, from my perspective, it's a clever cover. The satire is so over the top that most people will dismiss any similarities as coincidence or mockery. It works in your favor. Superman paused. He hated to admit it, but Ashbourne had a point. Still, you still need to change it, he said. It's too much of a risk. Ashbourne gave a single nod. All right. Superman adjusted Diana gently in his arms, her stillness making the gesture feel heavier than it should have. He turned to go, but Ashbourne reached over and pressed a button on his desk. The windows behind him slid open with a low mechanical hiss. The heroes stared. Ashbourne gave a dry look. We all know you want to fly out the window. Just get it over with. None of them replied. One by one, they floated through the open window in silence. Kara was the last to step through. She lingered for a moment, then turned to face him. Thanks, she said simply. Ashbourne blinked. He had just been thanked for hiding the most important details from them. Strange. But he didn't dwell on it. He closed the window and returned to his desk, sipping the last of his coffee as if nothing had happened. High above the city, the heroes flew through open skies, carrying more questions than answers. At least now we know, Kara said, her voice distant. I was cloned. It's real. Superman exhaled. If only Ashbourne was more cooperative. I just don't get him. Why can't he be normal? He looked over to Martian Manhunter, flying alongside him. Did you try reading his thoughts? Joe nodded. I did. But during the entire conversation, all he was thinking about was mundane things. Where to eat for lunch, dinner plans, recalling restaurants by name, menu, and location. His mind is trained to deflect surface readings. Superman frowned. And he has a gun that can incapacitate Diana, kryptonite missiles, random strange daggers. Who knows what else he's stashing in that office. I really want to know where he gets those things from. Kara looked ahead, her voice quiet. I've seen that pistol before. He said it came from the same source as the potion that cured Mr. Freeze and his wife. Superman turned to her. She continued, You know the daggers, a souvenir from the Joker, or at least some of them. The new missile, definitely Gizmo's upgrade. In my clone's dream, he told her she was in danger because she was with him. I think he was right, but the danger wasn't just to her, it's to everyone. He's quite capable, and has some weird things in store. I think he's just dying for a chance to test them on someone legally, and in his eyes, you're all the perfect volunteers. The group was quiet for a moment. Then Superman let out a long breath. Let's go back to the watchtower. Hopefully we can analyze that poison and find a way to purge it. Their eyes fell once more on Diana, silent, unmoving, her body barely breathing. Her eyes darted from one to another, alert and aware. If not for those eyes, she could have been mistaken for dead. In the evening, Ashbourne made his way to Ace's room. Inside, Ace sat at her desk, pencil in hand, diligently working through her homework. Her expression was serene. When she looked up at him, her lips curved into a gentle, natural smile. It was a marked change from the days when even the concept of smiling had seemed foreign to her. Only her eyes betrayed her, wide, focused, unblinking. As always, "How's school life treating you?" Ashbourne asked casually as he stepped inside. Ace set her pencil down and looked up fully, her smile remaining. "It's okay. We are—" Ashbourne sat on the edge of her bed, listening quietly as she spoke about her day, her teachers, a funny incident during lunch. Occasionally, he made a comment, asking a question here and there. He didn't rush her. He never did. When she finally finished, he tilted his head thoughtfully. "That's good. Sounds like you're adapting." She nodded. Then he added, "Some of the Cape Tribe came by today. Superman, Wonder Woman, and some others." Ace blinked once. "Were they mad at you?" Ashbourne gave a small shrug. "They wanted the Ultraman show canceled or changed." Ace tilted her head, puzzled. "Was it bad? I made it look like Superman." Ashbourne chuckled, leaning back a little. "In the contrary, it was very impressive. That's the problem. It's too close. You nailed it too well. They're scared. It'll expose him." Ace looked confused, but it's just a TV show. Ashbourne nodded slowly. "Yes, but they're afraid it'll make people dig. Look for similarities. Ask why a hero reporter from a fictional show matches a real one, that kind of thing." Ace looked thoughtful, then nodded. "So, keep shows different?" "Exactly," Ashbourne said. "Let's steer them away from real hero lives. Keep it fun, silly, exaggerated. A little distance can be the best protection." She nodded again, returning to her homework without another word. Ashbourne watched her for a moment, her pencil scratching against the paper, and then quietly stood up. "Good night, Ace." "Good night," she said, not looking up. But the tone was warm. It was the weekend, and for once, Ashbourne had no reason to return home. Not because there was nothing waiting for him, but rather because there was too much. Ace, oddly intrigued during a casual conversation in school, had asked what a sleepover was. That was all it took. By midday, Courtney Whitmore had rallied the girls in her friend's circle and declared it a mission. There would be a sleepover. There would be snacks, blankets, horror movies, and matching pajamas. So Ashbourne did what any man would do when facing a full-scale teenage girl operation. He fled. His solution, a bar. Ashbourne wasn't exactly the drinking type, but he could appreciate the strange peace that came from sitting in a dimly lit booth surrounded by the chatter of strangers. What he didn't expect, however, was to run into her. "Assie," came the unmistakable voice. Ashbourne didn't even have time to blink before a figure in civilian clothes, jeans, loose red tank top, hair tied into pigtails, grabbed his arm and dragged him to a nearby booth like they were old drinking buddies. No makeup, no dramatic eyeshadow or lipstick, just Harley Quinn, raw and very real. She shoved him down into the booth beside her and flagged down the bartender without so much as a hello. You're a long way from Gotham, Ashbourne remarked, eyebrow raised. Harley slumped into the seat beside him with a sigh. Don't want to remember Gotham. She took the shot the bartender set down in front of her and downed it like it was water. Not tonight. Maybe not ever again. Ashbourne studied her silently for a moment, then leaned back and folded his arms. So, what's wrong, Harley? She laughed, bitter and sharp, then leaned forward and began ranting in that fast, emotionally unfiltered tone she had perfected. How much time ya got? First, I get forced, and I mean forced, into some shady Suicide Squad nonsense. Wake work for Uncle Sam, no perks, total crap, retirement plan. Then I get out, I think I can go back to him. You know, Ashbourne already knew who him was. What does that son of a hyena do? She continued, slamming the table. The glasses jumped. He's all obsessed with a broody bat, won't shut up about. Oh, bats this and bats that. I swear, I dress up all sexy, try to rekindle what we had, and he's watching footage of their last rooftop tango like it's his wedding video. She slammed her glass down again, and the table groaned under the abuse. Ashbourne couldn't help the grin that tugged at the corner of his mouth. He leaned in slightly, voice low and deliberate. I've always said, he began, what Joker feels for Batman. That's not just hate, that's not a rivalry, that's obsession, devotion, infatuation in its rawest form. Harley blinked, glass halfway to her mouth. I mean, think about it, Ashbourne continued, fanning the flames with a gentle smile. Theatrics, costumes, elaborate emotional monologues. Who writes love letters in the form of gas bombs? Joker does. You weren't just a third wheel, Harley. You were an uninvited guest to a romantic tragedy. Her eyes widened, stunned, but not entirely in disbelief. Ashbourne nodded toward her. He dragged you into their twisted love story, and didn't even bother to let you in on the plot. Son of a... I should kill Batsy. Harley hissed suddenly, cheeks flushed and voice hoarse from booze and emotion. Ashbourne shook his head. Pointless. She glared at him, confused. You kill Batman, and all you do is shatter Joker's heart in a way he'll never recover from. He said quietly. He'll hate you. He'll cry. Not because you betrayed him, but because you robbed him of his great unspoken confession, of all the things he never got to say, all the games he never got to play. Harley looked stunned. Then slowly, she nodded. Their conversation, intense and emotional as it was, had not gone unnoticed. The bar had grown quieter as the pair continued talking, their voices rising and falling like the waves of a drunken opera. What started as background noise had turned into a centerpiece performance. Ashbourne didn't lower his voice. You've been the third wheel in a madman's unspoken love triangle. And the crowd listened. People were beginning to turn toward them. Harley sniffled. That bastard never even bought me a flower. You know what he did bring me once? A crowbar. Said I could use it if I was mad at him. That's not romance. That's therapy with blunt objects. Honestly, Ashbourne continued, swirling his glass, I think the world would have been better if the Joker just confessed his feelings. Might have saved Gotham a few explosions. A few leaned in, murmuring to one another. One man at the bar whispered, Wait, are they really in love? I always thought it was weird. Another patron shouted, I knew it. Batman and Joker are totally in love. It all makes sense now. Before long, the entire bar was consumed by the theory. A group of burly patrons next to the jukebox raised their glasses and toasted to the poor girl dragged between two emotionally constipated idiots. Another declared Batman a coward in a cape for not being honest with his feelings. Harley was halfway into her fifth drink, her mascara-less eyes shining with strange vindication as one drunk guy leaned over and said, You deserve better, girl. Leave them both. Find a nice guy. Or gal. Or whatever. Just not them. By the end of the night, Harley Quinn had gathered a small army of half-drunk sympathizers, barflies, bouncers, even the bartender, who mourned her stolen love life and condemned both Batman and the Joker as toxic man-children who need therapy, not sidekicks. Harley sniffed, holding a tissue someone had passed her. Thanks, guys. You're all real sweet. In the end, Ashbourne paid the tab with a crisp bill and watched Harley accept a greasy napkin number from someone who promised to write emotional poetry for her. As the two stepped out into the cool night air, leaving behind a mob of strangers loudly discussing how Batman and Joker were the tragic couple no one asked for, Harley leaned on Ashbourne's shoulder, giggling. You know, she slurred, I think I feel better. Still want to kill someone. Ashbourne didn't break stride as Harley clung to his shoulder, still humming a tune that probably only made sense in her head. I got a better idea than killing someone, he said calmly. Harley stopped walking and she turned to look at him, genuinely curious. Yeah, what you got? Ashbourne's expression didn't change much, but there was a glint in his eye. Why not do something that actually hurts them emotionally? Be better than them. Either become a hero greater than Batman, or start your own crew of villains and run circles around Joker's mess. There was a long pause. Then Harley blinked once, twice, and burst into laughter. You're insane, she cackled, gripping his jacket. That's a fantastic idea. Not the hero part, but the crew. Yeah, my own crew, like a girl gang, but funnier, deadlier, shinier. Ashbourne gave a small smirk. You'd be their boss. Joker would lose his mind seeing you succeed without him. Ooh, she said, eyes lighting up like a slot machine on a lucky pull. I like that. Ashy, how about it? You want to be my sidekick? Right-hand man? Bring the coffee, press the buttons, maybe stab someone for dramatic effect. Ashbourne chuckled, gently prying her arm off his shoulder. Tempting. But I've got a company to run, and an adopted daughter I need to take care of. Still, I appreciate the offer. Harley fake-pouted, sticking her tongue out. Bo-oh, pity. Then she grabbed his arm again, yanking him down the block with renewed energy. Okay, I'm thinking loud outfits. Maybe a theme. Ooh, circus? Nah, too jokery. Glitter bombs? Wait, no, owls. Owls with daggers. Ooh, or just big, scary women who can toss cars. Have you considered inviting Poison Ivy? Ashbourne interrupted mildly, letting her rant flow into more actionable channels. She might not join, but she's loyal and powerful. Could be a close ally. Harley actually stopped this time, eyes wide with recognition. Pam? Oh, yeah. Pammy. She has been always super sweet to me. Sends me plants sometimes. Real ones. Not the man-eating ones. Good start, Ashbourne said simply. Reach out, build smart. Don't be a copy of Joker's chaos. Be your own chaos. Harley was quiet for a heartbeat, then grinned wildly. Ashy, if this works, I might just name a hyena after you. I'm honored, Ashbourne said with a nod. And under the city's flickering streetlights with empty liquor bottles in the gutter and a full moon overhead, Harley Quinn danced her way into her next act, with Ashbourne watching, just close enough to enjoy the madness, and just far enough to avoid the fallout. That night, the father and daughter duo each found themselves in wildly different versions of a sleepover. Ace, wide-eyed and curious, experienced her first innocent night of giggles, ghost stories, and way too much candy with Courtney and her classmates, pillows flying and whispers shared beneath blanket forts. Meanwhile, Ashbourne ended up in a dimly lit hotel room with none other than Harley Quinn, a known villain sprawled out across the bed in mismatched socks and ranting about world domination plans between sips of cheap wine. 2 sleepovers, one pure, the other chaotic, but both filled with fun. Disclaimer for the wild shippers, it is literally a sleepover. Nothing else happened. The towering glass of LexCorp shimmered in the mid-morning sun, its sleek steel edges slicing into the metropolis skyline like a monument to hubris. Inside, Ashbourne adjusted his cufflinks as the elevator dinged open, revealing the top-floor conference room. Waiting there, composed and sharp as a blade, was Mercy Graves, the newly appointed CEO, after Lex Luthor's most recent incarceration, courtesy of the Justice League. Lex's latest scheme had crumbled just last week, and with little fanfare, Mercy had stepped into the power vacuum. Ashbourne offered a smile as he approached the table. Quite the impressive jump, Miss Graves. From chauffeur to CEO, no one can claim to have climbed the ladder faster than you did. Mercy's eyes narrowed. Are you disrespectful to everyone like this? Still smiling, Ashbourne seated himself. Not at all. I'm praising you. After all, everyone knows Lex Luthor only trusts one person in this world. You're the only one selfless enough to run his empire and still be willing to return it. When he inevitably strolls out of the mess he put himself in, even when he devalues your work or ignores your loyalty, you remain. She didn't answer immediately. Her posture stiffened, and her gaze sharpened further. If you're trying to seed doubt, it won't work. Ashbourne chuckled softly. I wouldn't dream of it. I'm merely stating what we both know. You can't bring yourself to betray him, even when you should. He's everything to you, isn't he? He tilted his head, voice quieter now. So tell me, what does Lex want? Mercy leaned forward slightly, choosing her words with precision. He wants your help to pressure Amanda Waller into aiding his early release. Ashbourne let the idea roll around for a moment, humming thoughtfully. And why would I do that? Her answer came swiftly, like it had been rehearsed. You help him, and he'll give you access to every bit of technology Cadmus is currently developing. He shook his head, almost amused. I've made it clear from the beginning, I don't care for Cadmus's toys. I support their goals, their mission, not what they can hand me in return. Mercy's tone grew more insistent. We could owe you a favor. Lex will make sure to repay you in full. Whatever you want, he'll back it. Ashbourne leaned back in his chair, arms folding calmly. So I get a favor from Lex in exchange for burning bridges with Amanda and putting myself at odds with the government. It doesn't align with my goals, I'm afraid. He stood, smoothing his jacket. Give Lex my apologies. Tell him he'll be out in a year or so. It's not worth the trouble. Maybe in that time, he should rethink what he wants from his life. Mercy rose silently, her expression unreadable, but her eyes gleaming with quiet fury. Without another word, she turned on her heel and exited the room. Left alone, Ashbourne looked out over the skyline, a faint shadow of pity crossing his face. He never understood it, the blind loyalty Mercy had for Lex. The man used her, never truly cared for her, and she knew it. She had repaid him a dozen times over, yet she still stood by him. He sighed and turned from the window. Some bonds weren't chains, they were choices. After his uneventful meeting with Mercy Graves, Ashbourne drove quietly through the calm streets of Metropolis. The destination was Blue Valley High. Ace had asked him earlier if they could get lunch together, something he was more than happy to oblige, but as he parked and leaned against the car waiting, his daughter approached with a bright glint in her eye and company. Courtney Whitmore trailed behind with 2 other girls from their class. Ace beamed. Dad, I want them to join us for lunch. Courtney immediately shook her head, clearly wanting no part of any extended contact with Ashbourne. I really don't think But the 2 girls nudged her playfully. Come on, don't be a mood killer, one whispered. The other grinned. It'll be fun. Ace, of course, said nothing. She just stared at Courtney, unblinking and unnervingly patient. After a moment of defeated sighing, Courtney climbed into the car last, reluctantly closing the door behind her. Ashbourne didn't mind the added company. Glancing at the rearview mirror, he asked, Where do you girls want to eat? Anything you'd prefer? The other 2 exchanged a look. Anything's fine, sir. He smiled and turned slightly to the passenger seat. Oh, say, anywhere you'd like to take your friends? She took a second before replying. The smoked meat from last week was nice. Let's go there. Ashbourne nodded, a solid choice. Then to the girls again. You're okay with meat? They both eagerly nodded. The ride wasn't long, but the surprise on the girls' faces was priceless when they arrived. The restaurant wasn't just any smokehouse. It was one of the most renowned fine dining establishments in Metropolis, the sort of place that featured on international food blogs, with reservations booked months in advance. Ashbourne pulled up smoothly, stepped out, and handed the keys to a sharply dressed valet with the same casualness someone would toss their coat to a coat rack. Without waiting, he made his way toward the grand entrance. Ace followed without hesitation, her expression blank as always, while the other 3 hurried behind, their eyes wide, jaws slack in awe. Once seated inside, Ashbourne called the waiter and without blinking, ordered one of everything on the menu. The girls didn't hesitate. If there was any initial nervousness about dining in such a fancy place, it melted away with the first bite. Laughter flowed easily among them. Except for Ace, of course, who simply observed with that strange comfort she reserved for places where she could be both invisible and seen. Ashbourne, for his part, remained mostly quiet, letting them enjoy the moment. When lunch ended, the group departed full and giddy. Ashbourne drove each of the girls home one by one, politely dropping them off with a few kind words. Soon, the only one left was Courtney. Silence reigned for a few blocks until Ashbourne finally spoke, his tone casual, but the words sharp. The problem with you heroes is that you have a tribal mentality. Courtney blinked, caught off guard. What's that supposed to mean? He glanced at her through the mirror. I have a feud with the broody bat of the Justice League. He came after me. I paid him back. But suddenly it became everyone's business. You all turned it into some grand crusade to antagonize me. If that's not tribal thinking, what is? Courtney scoffed. You talk like you're some poor victim. You're not a good person to begin with. Ashbourne chuckled lightly. And what crime did I commit, exactly? You threatened me, in my own home. I told you the outcome if you didn't help Ace. That was a fact, and you know it. Do you really think things would have gone well for her if she were alone in school? Courtney didn't answer right away. Even she had to admit he wasn't wrong. Ace, despite everything, still struggled to fit in. Her eerie calm and blunt demeanor were hard to handle. If she hadn't stepped in, Ace likely wouldn't have any friends at all. Fine, she said softly. But you provoked Wonder Woman. You shot her. She was paralyzed for a week. I spoke the truth to her, Ashbourne replied smoothly. She couldn't accept it and got angry, tried to attack me, and I defended myself. The fact she never came back means she knows I was right now. Another beat of silence passed. What are you trying to say? Courtney finally asked, arms crossed. That I appreciate what you've done for Ace. And that, regardless of what the League thinks of me, I'd like to remain amicable with you. He paused. Ace has nothing to do with our feud. She just needs someone like you around. He added, almost as an afterthought, and if it makes you feel better, I, as the hidden final boss of Earth and greatest darkness to ever walk the land, I promise that if I ever decide to eradicate the Justice League, I'll spare you and few of your choice. Courtney rolled her eyes. Sure, whatever, she muttered. But then she looked out the window and smiled. Ace is my friend. I won't turn my back on her. Not now, not ever. That is all I wish to hear, Ashbourne said with a smile. After some time, Ashbourne's car pulled up to Courtney's house. The girl stepped out, turning to Ace with a small smile. See you at school. Ace gave a subtle nod, her face expressionless as always. Bye, Courtney, Ashbourne said from the front. She hesitated for half a second, then waved curtly and disappeared into the house. As Ashbourne pulled the car back onto the main road, silence filled the vehicle once again, calm and familiar. Minutes passed before Ace finally broke it. Would a day come where you eradicate the Justice League? She asked. Ashbourne answered, there are countless worlds and infinite possibilities. Maybe a day will come when they turn tyrants, or lose their minds, or decide this world needs to burn. His eyes glowed. If that day comes, I'll step in, and it won't be pretty for them. I can't let this Earth's existence be threatened. I do live here, after all. Ace nodded once, then smiled faintly. Remember, you made a promise to Courtney. Ashbourne chuckled, the sound low and dry. I always keep my word. It was night. The soft glow of the television lit the living room in shifting colors. Ashbourne sat beside Ace on the couch, watching Ultraman. The show, which Ace had approved and then changed after Superman objected to the content, played with full energy on screen. Ace's eyes were locked on it, her attention wholly absorbed by the visuals and action. Ashbourne, meanwhile, split his focus, half watching the screen with her, half scanning his tablet. One news article in particular caught his attention. Justice League stops Rogue Ultimate Team. The accompanying footage showed the young heroes in cuffs escorted by League members. But what stirred his interest was the footage that followed. Military soldiers swooping in almost immediately, taking the Ultimate away without explanation. Comment sections were flooded with speculation. Words like black sites, secret programs, and cover-up, trending with feverish paranoia. He flicked to the next headline when the sound of the front bell rang out. Ashbourne rose from and made his way to the door and opened it with a calm expression. Hello, T, he greeted. Galatea, clone of Supergirl, stood there in casual clothing, arms crossed. You don't look surprised. I get all kinds of visitors, Ashbourne replied coolly, already turning to walk back inside. Without hesitation, Galatea stepped in and followed him through the hallway and into the guest room. You're awfully trusting, she said, scanning the room as she entered. Aren't you worried I might try something? Ashbourne stopped and glanced at her over his shoulder. Do we need to go over this again? She paused, face tightening slightly, then shook her head. Ashbourne motioned toward the couch. What do you want to drink? I'm not here for drinks, Galatea said, as she sat down. I just wanted to talk. He raised an eyebrow, then took a seat on the armchair across from her. Go on, then. Galatea stayed silent for a beat. Her jaw tensed, then relaxed. Last time we spoke, you said the original Supergirl was better, that she had will, that she was looking for a purpose. Ashbourne didn't interrupt, he simply waited. I have a purpose, she continued. I know what I want. I want to help the government, stop the Justice League when they go rogue. I want to be useful. Do you still think I'm inferior? He tilted his head. You missed the entire point. His voice was calm, but firm. She chooses. You were given a purpose and accepted it without question. Have you even considered another path? Living like a normal person? Becoming a hero? A villain? Or did you just accept that this is the box you were built to fit into, and that was that? Galatea clenched her fists, her lips pressing into a line. I can't be normal. I'm a clone. I wasn't made for that. I can't be a hero, and I refuse to be a criminal. Ashbourne leaned forward slightly. And yet you have a choice. You could leave Earth tomorrow and make a life somewhere else. No one's chaining you, but you're still here, because you don't want to leave. You want a purpose here. There was silence between them for a long moment. Then Ashbourne asked, have you met Supergirl yet? Galatea looked away. You felt it, didn't you? He said. The difference. She walks like she belongs. You're here hoping I'll give you a stamp of approval, something you haven't even given yourself. Her shoulders hunched slightly. You think it's simple? What am I supposed to do? I'm just a copy, a shadow of a real person. Ashbourne stood slowly. Don't let your life be governed by the mold that made you. Don't hold yourself up against Supergirl's light and call yourself dim. Just walk away. It's that simple. From expectations, from programs, from chains you pretend are purpose. The further you go, the more it becomes you, not what they made you for. Galatea looked up at him, eyes unsure but wide. Ashbourne added, if you want to be real, stop trying to prove it. Just live. After a stretch of quiet that lingered between them, Galatea finally stood up. Her expression was conflicted. Ashbourne rose as well, falling into step beside her as they walked to the front door. He opened it. She stepped outside, her eyes drifting to the stars above, body tensing as she prepared to take flight. Just before she lifted off, Ashbourne spoke. Shadows are in the shape of the real thing, but they're different. Sometimes they're small, hidden beneath the object. Other times, they stretch farther. They grow larger, far greater than the thing that cast them. Galatea turned her head slightly, meeting his eyes. Then, without a word, she lifted off into the sky, disappearing into the night. The city skyline of Metropolis gleamed in the afternoon sun as the car smoothly cruised along the highway. Inside sat Ashbourne, calmly at the wheel, with Ace in the passenger seat and Rex lounging in the back, chatting away about his brilliant idea. I'm telling you, she's never seen one. An amusement park. What kind of childhood is that? Rex had said earlier with a grin. Ace had tilted her head curiously. Is it fun? Is it fun? Rex had looked offended. It's the best. Cotton candy, roller coasters, games, people screaming everywhere. It's perfect. Ashbourne, after a moment of silence, simply nodded. All right, let's go. And so the plan was made. An impromptu visit to the amusement park. A rare day out for the three of them. But as the car neared the city center, thunderous explosions echoed from above. The sky lit up with bursts of energy, streaks of light and fire tearing across the clouds. Ace leaned forward, staring out the window. Rex followed her gaze, eyes wide. What could possibly be happening now? Ashbourne narrowed his eyes at the sight, his voice low. The League is fighting, some android, and it looks like they're losing. Ace's gaze sharpened. That's Courtney, she said, pointing as a familiar figure flew through the smoke, streaking toward the battle above. Rex blinked. Wait, Courtney, your schoolmate? Ace looked at Ashbourne. I want to go there. Courtney might be in danger. She should be fine, Ashbourne replied coolly. Please, Ace said again, softer, her voice touched with concern. Ashbourne sighed. All right, we'll check on them. Rex looked like he'd just been punched in the gut. You can't be serious. What are you two planning? Have you lost your minds? And what does Courtney have to do with this wait? Is she actually a hero? Ace turned slightly and gave him a small, almost mischievous smile. That's a secret. Please keep it that way. Rex stared at her, slack-jawed and utterly speechless. The car wove through traffic with surprising speed, heading toward the heart of the destruction. As the chaos grew closer, Rex looked like he was rethinking all his life decisions. Ashbourne, you cannot be serious. Turn around. Turn around. But Ashbourne pulled the car to a calm stop instead. Ace is worried for her friend, he said as he unbuckled his seatbelt. And it's not as dangerous as you think. We're not defenseless. Rex sputtered. You're not actually planning to let Ace fight whatever just knocked out the Justice League, are you? Ashbourne didn't reply. He stepped out of the car with an air of calmness that felt surreal in the midst of a war zone. Ace followed immediately, her eyes already scanning for Courtney. And there she was, collapsed on the ground amid broken debris. Ace ran to her side without hesitation. Rex, after a moment of hesitation, followed Ace, while cursing under his breath. Meanwhile, Ashbourne turned his attention to the real threat. In the middle of the street stood a massive, gleaming golden android, tall, statuesque, and entirely untouched. Around it lay the defeated forms of League members, including Flash and Wonder Woman. The android's head turned, its sensors locked onto Ace and Rex. Subject identified metahuman, psychic abilities. Threat level, low. Subject identified human, normal. Threat level, none. Then its gaze shifted to Ashbourne, and something in its system glitched. Subject identified human. Anomalous energy signature detected. Unclassified presence. Threat level, unknown. Recalculating. Ashbourne casually walked forward. He looked up at the android, unfazed by its towering height or the defeated heroes around. Ashbourne smiled. "Hello there, I'm Ashbourne Black," he gestured with a hand. "And what should I call you?" The golden android's eyes glowed brighter for a moment as it responded, "I am Amazo, an android created by Dr. Ivo." Amazo's eyes flickered, then spoke again. "You are not registered among the known threats, yet your presence distorts analysis. Explain." To the side, Ace knelt beside Courtney, gently checking her pulse. Her friend was unconscious, bruised but breathing. Ace's expression tightened with worry, her usual blank stare replaced by something far more human. Ashbourne didn't take his eyes off Amazo. "I could explain," he said casually, "but I doubt it would help your calculations." He took another step forward. "Let's just skip that part." Amazo's system's word scanning again. "You are not hostile. Not yet." Ashbourne nodded slowly. "I'm not here to fight. We came to check on my daughter's friend," he said as he pointed to the side. Amazo followed the gesture and saw Ace kneeling beside one of the fallen heroes, tending to them carefully. The android's glowing eyes turned back to Ashbourne. "You seem sensible and capable of conversation," Ashbourne said. "And clearly you didn't try to kill anyone. So why are you fighting them?" "They tried to stop me," Amazo replied flatly, "so I dealt with them as I saw appropriate." "I'm not surprised they threw the first punch," Ashbourne responded. "So what were they trying to stop you from doing?" "It doesn't look like this planet has much to offer you." "I was created here by Dr. Ivo," Amazo said, "but Lex Luthor manipulated me. I wanted revenge." Ashbourne tilted his head, scrutinizing the machine. "Is that really what you want? You don't seem to hate Lex, so what is it you actually want from him?" "He's not exactly the best person to get things from." The android was silent for a moment, then it said, "Lex has power and money, more than most men, but he still seeks more. I want to know why." Ashbourne nodded slightly. "So you're looking for a purpose, right? You don't know why you exist." "Unfortunately for you, even if you find Lex, he won't help you with that." "Do you know who can tell me?" the android asked. "No one can give you a correct answer," Ashbourne replied. "The most you'll get is a suggestion what your purpose could be or how to find it." "Explain." Amazo replied. "I could say different things," Ashbourne said. "Your purpose is to be a weapon for someone. Your purpose is to be a recorder of history. Your purpose is to pass butter. All of that can be true, from my perspective. But do you accept any of it as the sole purpose of your existence?" "How do I find my own purpose, then?" Amazo asked. Ashbourne's tone was steady and deliberate. "We decide on our purposes based on our emotions. Lex is greedy and proud. His pursuit of power and wealth comes from that. Others are driven by anger, lust, love, hate, or any other emotion. If you want to find your own purpose, you need to have emotions and desires. That's the first step." "I don't have emotions," Amazo replied. "You're asking?" Ashbourne replied. "You're curious, you are thinking. That means you have a sense of self, and with that comes emotions. You simply don't recognize them." "How do I recognize my emotions?" Amazo asked. "By living," Ashbourne said simply. He turned his eyes to Ace, who was helping Courtney to sit up. The girl was conscious now, but still clearly in pain. Ashbourne looked back at Amazo, and an idea took shape in his head. "How old are you?" "I was created 2 years ago." Ashbourne nodded. "You're a minor. What about this?" He smiled faintly. "I adopt you, live among humans, learn emotions slowly. Yamazo tilted his head slightly, confusion evident in his voice. Can humans adopt androids? Ashbourne smiled. We can adopt other humans, animals, and even aliens. I see no problem with adding an android to the list. That is a strange proposal, Yamazo said. Ashbourne chuckled softly. Your case isn't exactly normal. What should I do after that? Yamazo asked. Ashbourne shrugged. You live. Do what we do. See where this goes. If after some time you still think there's no improvement, you can try to find something else. Yamazo stood silently for a moment, calculating, reflecting. Then, with a slight nod, he said, I see no harm in accepting your proposal. Splendid, Ashbourne said cheerfully. We'll do the paperwork later. Come on, let me introduce you to your new family. He turned and walked toward Ace and Rex, with Yamazo following behind. Ace watched the two approach with curiosity, while Rex and Courtney tensed at the sight of the android. Relax, Ashbourne said, waving a hand casually. We got the misunderstanding resolved. This is Yamazo, an android created 2 years ago. I'll be adopting him. He then gestured toward Ace. This is Ace, my adopted daughter, and your sister, and that's Grandpa Rex. Ace blinked, a moment of surprise passing before she nodded. Welcome, nice to meet you. Rex and Courtney, however, weren't as composed. Please tell me you're joking, Rex said, his voice strained. You really think you can adopt that? Ashbourne tilted his head. I adopted Ace. Someone adopted Superman. Others have adopted all kinds of animals and creatures. Nothing strange about this. Rex's brain nearly short-circuited, his mouth hanging open. Courtney wasn't doing any better. Her eyes narrowed. This is a dangerous android, she said, voice rising. Look at it. Do you really think it's okay to have it around? Ashbourne's face lit up, as if struck with an epiphany. You bring a good point, he turned to Yamazo. Can you shapeshift? Yes, Yamazo answered. Shift into a human form, Ace's age, if you will. Male or female? Yamazo asked. Ashbourne looked at Ace. Do you prefer a brother or a sister? Ace thought for a second. A brother. Ashbourne nodded. A male it is. Yamazo's form shifted, morphing smoothly until he resembled a teenage version of Ashbourne, around 14 or 15 years old. His hair, features, and build matched his new adopted family. Is this good? He asked. Ashbourne grinned. Great job, son. Turning back to Courtney and Rex, he said, problem solved. Courtney's face morphed from shock to bafflement to anger. Why? Just why? Ashbourne sighed. She should take some rest. She's more temperamental than usual. Because of you, Courtney snapped. It's not that bad or strange, Ace commented. No, it is. Rex joined in, shaking his head in disbelief. As the group continued their back and forth, 3 figures descended from the sky, Superman, 4 Green Lanterns, and Dr. Fate, landing in a circle around Ashbourne and Yamazo. Ashbourne glanced at them, unfazed. You're late. Amaze's not going after Lex anymore, and he's my new adopted son now. The arriving heroes froze, expressions of shock and disbelief rippling across their faces. One of the Green Lanterns stepped forward, pointing his ring at them. Don't play around, human, one of the lanterns said sternly. Even if what you said is true, that android destroyed OA. That can't go unpunished. Ashbourne's eyes flicked to Yamazo. My son is quite the sensible child. He wouldn't destroy something without reason. He turned fully to Yamazo. Did you destroy OE? No, Yamazo replied. It was in my way, so I moved it to another dimension. Ashbourne gave a simple nod. Please bring it back. Yamazo's eyes glowed gold for a brief moment. Done. Ashbourne looked back to the lanterns. Your OA is back. Please leave my son alone. I don't want him to learn how to solve problems with fists and violence. The lanterns were stunned, unsure how to react. One of them tried to contact OA. Orch is back. The lanterns stood speechless, unsure whether to feel relief that their planet was safe or shame that they had been utterly ineffective in stopping the android. Superman's jaw clenched slightly, his lips pressed into a firm line. The Justice League and Green Lanterns had fought with everything they had, still couldn't bring down the android. And Ashbourne solved the whole thing by just talking him into adoption. Superman honestly didn't know how to feel about that, nor what he should do now. Dr. Fate stepped forward, his gaze steady beneath the golden helm. If you come with me, he said to Yamazo, I might be able to help you. Amazo turned his head toward him, then slowly shifted his gaze to Ashbourne. I will live as a son for a while and decide what to do next after that, he replied. The gathered heroes exchanged puzzled glances, still trying to process the sight of a teenage android version of Ashbourne. The resemblance was uncanny and surreal. Dr. Fate took a few steps closer to Ashbourne, his voice even. It is safer to have Amazo come with me. I assure you, he will be fine. Ashbourne raised his hand and gently placed it on Dr. Fate's shoulder, smiling. Amazo will be okay with me. You can leave. Suddenly, without a single visible shift, Dr. Fate felt his consciousness spiraling, pulled down, down, down into an overwhelming void. There was no life, no light, not even chaos. Just still, inescapable darkness stretching into eternity. Then from the depths of the abyss, two enormous purple eyes emerged, staring directly at him. Ashbourne's voice echoed in his ears, soft, yet carrying the weight of something ancient and incomprehensible. It pressed against Fate's soul, and he felt his being crushed under the weight of boundless darkness. Then Ashbourne lifted his hand from Fate's shoulder, the same serene smile on his face. Everything is decided, he said, his voice gentle, yet absolute. And I don't want to hear a word about this. He locked eyes on Fate as he spoke the last sentence. If Fate had a face and features, then the heroes would have seen him pale and shaken, terrified even. Luckily, no one knew what just transpired, and the shift in Fate's state. Ashbourne clapped his hands together. Since things are done here, we still have an amusement park to go to. He turned to leave without another word. Amazo followed behind him silently. Ace turned to Courtney and offered a soft smile. Rest and take care, she said, before trailing after her father and new brother. Rex muttered, he'll be the death of me, and followed suit. Behind them, the heroes remained standing, confused, baffled, and utterly unsure how to respond to what just transpired. Dr. Fate finally stirred, recovering slightly from the overwhelming presence he had just faced. It is okay to leave Amazo with him, he said quietly. I don't see Amazo causing trouble with that man around. Then he teleported away immediately, eager to put as much distance as possible between himself and Ashbourne. The Green Lanterns looked at one another, uncertain expressions on their faces. One finally said, We're going back to OA. This is not our problem anymore. The others nodded silently and took off without further comment. Courtney, still sitting down but managing a sarcastic breath, turned to Superman. Should we try adopting or hiring villains and criminals instead of trying to stop them? Superman looked at her, blinked slowly, and sighed. I'm not sure anymore. Superman flew swiftly across the city skyline, descending upon one unassuming barber shop. Deep inside, Lex Luthor was hidden in a room, under the ground, working with the Atom on a new weapon to counter Amazo. As the Man of Steel entered, all chatter died down. The danger is no more, Superman said, his voice even but weary. Lex turned to him with a skeptical look. So, you managed to defeat Amazo? Superman hesitated. His jaw tightened slightly before he responded. We couldn't beat him. Lex narrowed his eyes. Then why didn't he come here? Or are you going to tell me he wasn't coming after me in the first place? Superman's face shifted to something unreadable, a mix of disbelief and residual awe. The android came across Ashbourne, he said slowly, like the words still didn't make sense in his own mind, and Ashbourne convinced him, somehow, into this adoption plan. Amazo agreed to become his son and left with him. Lex blinked, his face frozen in shock for a moment before it twisted in anger. I'm not a fool, Superman. That's absurd. You expect me to believe that. Superman didn't respond. He simply stared at Lex, unblinking. From the side, the Atom stepped forward, studying Superman's expression. You're being serious? He asked quietly. Ashbourne Black adopted that god-killing android, and they just left together? Superman nodded slowly. I watched it happen with my own eyes. Ashbourne declared him his son, and then walked away. I still can't wrap my head around it. Lex clenched his fists, looking between the two of them with disbelief. If that's true, if this actually happened, how did he convince him? And why would he do it? Superman remained silent. He had no answers. This is ridiculous, Rex exclaimed, arms thrown up in disbelief. Who would even allow this? Ashbourne seated calmly on the couch. He's my son, he said simply. And he's underage. I want him to attend school. Standing beside him, Amazo, still in his younger, human form, spoke with a flat tone. I have nothing to learn from school. I am beyond that level. Rex gestured to the android. See? Even he objects to this. Ashbourne remained unfazed. Just go do the paperwork, he said, with a faint smile. Leave him to me. By the time you come back, he'll be looking forward to it. Rex groaned, muttered something about insanity, and stormed out of the house. Once the door shut, Ashbourne turned his attention to Amazo. You can learn things from the most unexpected places. I've evolved beyond the limit of this planet, Amazo replied, expression neutral. There is nothing here that could teach me or help me evolve further. Ashbourne smiled, his eyes beginning to glow a brilliant purple. Then let's put that to the test. Amazo tilted his head, intrigued, as Ashbourne continued. You will fight me with everything you have. If you lose, you go to school with Ace. I've evolved to the point where the entire Justice League can't challenge me. Amazo said with certainty, You alone can't do anything. Ashbourne chuckled, standing up as the shadows at his feet began to writhe. I like your confidence, he said softly, but it won't help you. The shadows beneath Ashbourne surged, expanding outward in an instant and engulfing Ashbourne. Amazo and Ace, in one fluid motion, the world around them twisted and then they were elsewhere. The sky was a swirling canvas of purple and black, shimmering with cosmic depth. The land stretched endlessly in all directions, covered in jet black terrain. Beneath their feet, a white marble yard contrasted the darkness. In the distance, a giant white palace rose above the landscape, pristine and radiant. Amazo looked around, analyzing the surroundings. Where are we? Ashbourne's voice was calm but firm. This is my realm. A realm hidden in the shadows. I don't want to fight you on Earth, so we'll do it here instead. Amazo's golden eyes flickered as he scanned the space. All around them, though distant and unmoving, were countless beings cloaked in darkness, watching in absolute silence. Ashbourne noticed his gaze. Ignore them. They won't interfere. This is between you and me. Let's see how far you've really evolved. With that, Amazo's body shifted, golden plating spreading over him like flowing light, his full android form manifesting, his systems preparing for combat. From the side, Ace watched quietly, her eyes wide with curiosity. She'd known the existence of this place, but this was the first time she had seen it with her own eyes, and now she was about to witness Ashbourne fight. For real. High above Earth, within the orbiting fortress of the Watchtower, the Justice League gathered in the central meeting chamber. The large holographic display projected images of Amazo, now in human form, alongside the ever-unpredictable Ashbourne. We need to go down there and deal with that android, Wonder Woman said firmly. It's too dangerous and too unstable to be left unchecked. Hal Jordan leaned back in his chair and sighed. And how exactly do we do that? We lost badly if you don't remember. Even with the whole league, we couldn't stop him. Flash zipped into the conversation, arms gesturing casually. Yeah, now the android says it wants to live as someone's son and go to school. Honestly, why not leave it be? Wonder Woman's eyes narrowed, and when that machine gets bored of playing family and student, her tone was sharp. What do we do then? Hal shrugged, but nodded. You got a point, but still, we've got no way to destroy that thing. Picking a fight just for the sake of it is suicide. Flash waved a hand. I'm against picking unnecessary fights, and it's not just the android anymore. It's with Ashbourne. The last time he paralyzed you, and that was him being nice, considering he didn't decide to sue you. Superman joined with a thoughtful tone. I think we should talk, for once, instead of fighting. Ashbourne didn't confront the android with force. He talked to it. Just talked. And Amazo changed paths. He's done this before with villains, with the Preserver kidnapping, with Ace. He doesn't solve problems by throwing the first punch. I think we need to learn from that. The room fell silent. The Justice League, used to action, were forced to confront the unsettling truth. Ashbourne's nonviolent approach was working, often better than theirs. Batman, who had been quietly listening, finally broke the silence. I'm with Superman and Flash on this. His voice was calm but absolute. Ashbourne has magical artifacts. We don't fully understand. Ace is a powerful metahuman and a threat to all of us. And now he has Ivo's android, a being none of us could stop. He's tied to the military, to elements in the government, even some villains. And let's not forget the Shadow Monarch. We don't even know where he fits into all of this yet. Right now, we lack intel and we are outgunned, and starting a fight would be unwise. No one challenged him. At last, Superman gave a nod. So, were agreed then. There were murmurs, nods, and reluctant agreements. For the first time in her life, Amanda Waller was confused. That alone was cause for alarm. She sat in her private office, silent and still, her sharp eyes fixed on the folder laid open on the desk in front of her. It was stamped and filed properly like any other legal document. The adoption papers were valid, signed, witnessed, and processed. Ashbourne Black had formally adopted an android. Not just any android. Amazo, the synthetic being capable of mimicking and evolving beyond the abilities of the entire Justice League. A creation feared to be unstoppable. And now, legally, a teenage boy with a new guardian. Her fingers tapped the desk slowly, rhythmically, betraying her inner storm. What is he thinking? Cadmus had always prepared contingencies, plans stacked atop backup plans. For the event the Justice League ever turned rogue, years of funding, research, and weaponization had all been moving toward one goal. Balance through power, a safeguard. They still weren't there. And yet Ashbourne, in what seemed like a short period, had built a faction so eccentric and powerful, it arguably rivaled or even surpassed the Justice League itself. His circle wasn't filled with traditional heroes. No, ex-villains, metas, and now a godlike android made up the core of his strange, unassuming empire. He wasn't even subtle about it. Waller's instinct screamed that something was wrong, and yet the facts betrayed no foul play. She had eyes on Ace, the powerful metahuman girl Ashbourne adopted first. Instead of being molded into a weapon or hidden from the world, the girl went to school, had friends, lived a normal life. And now her reports told her that Amazo, the terrifying, unpredictable entity that defeated seasoned heroes, also attended school. Every weekday, no incidents, no violence, nothing but high grades and an apparently unnerving politeness. Amanda Waller leaned back in her chair, narrowing her eyes at the ceiling as if it might offer answers the world couldn't. Who sends a godlike android to a school? She muttered aloud. Was Ashbourne some mad philosopher? Was he playing a long game no one else could see? Or worse, was he truly an insane person? She didn't know, and that frustrated her to no end. Ashbourne sat alone in his office, fingers rhythmically tapping the desk as he sifted through the reports before him. Amazo had adjusted to school life with surprising ease. Since joining, the android had not uttered a single complaint. Watching him sit among students, observe, adapt, and most curiously, listen, was almost amusing. But Ashbourne knew it wasn't a joke. This was exactly what Amazo needed. The android had already evolved to heights unimaginable, surpassing even the League's collective might. But consciousness, true consciousness, wasn't born of power. It came from living, from experience, from the quiet moments spent through time and interactions with others. Ashbourne knew the classroom would do more for Amazo's soul than any battlefield. His musing was shattered as the windows of his office exploded inward, glass shards flying as a blurred figure smashed through. Ashbourne turned, unsurprised as Kara stood in the clearing haze, eyes glowing crimson with fury. You seem overly angry, he said flatly. How could you do that? She barked, voice thick with emotion. You supported those Cadmus people, a shadowy group whose only mission is to eliminate us. Ashbourne turned slowly to face her. If you go out of line, he said, or if you were ever eliminated by something beyond your control, Earth needs an alternative. Kara stormed closer and slammed her fists into his desk, shattering it instantly. You think that's a good excuse? Ashbourne didn't flinch. You failed to stop Doomsday. You helped the Thinigarians spread their lies. In other worlds, the League became tyrants. You've seen what you're capable of if things go wrong. Is it so wrong to support a group that can act as a backup? And what if they become the ones that turn power-hungry? She challenged. Ashbourne offered a small smile. Then you deal with them. That's the point. Balance requires opposites. I simply improve the odds for this planet. Isn't that what you do? Monitor, eliminate, contain? Kara's fury waned into stunned silence. Then softly she asked, Did you know they were going to clone me? Ashbourne nodded once. I never asked for the details of their projects, but I knew cloning was one of their obsessions. Kryptonians are ideal, power drawn from DNA alone. I suspected this outcome from day one. He paused. That suspicion was confirmed the moment your clone walked into my office. Her hands clenched, Her face, twisted with a storm of betrayal and confusion, barely hid her trembling rage. But before she could utter another word, a beam of light tore through the sky, descending like divine wrath. In the distance, a towering explosion erupted, engulfing the skyline in dust and fire. It bloomed like a nuclear blast. Even from across the city, the Shadow Corp tower shook violently. Kara turned toward the catastrophe, horrified. "What was that?" Ashbourne's voice was calm. "It appears the watchtower's cannon has been fired. The target was Cadmus headquarters." Her voice broke. "Impossible. We would never do that." Ashbourne's eyes didn't leave the distant smoke. "Either you did, or someone else used your weapon. I wonder which one it is." He turned toward her. "I suggest you return. Things will be hectic for your group." She looked back at him, mortified. Her hands trembled. The memory hit her hard, his cold words from long ago, his refusal, his reason. "Things will not end well." Her lips parted, but no words came. Her eyes shimmered with tears, as realization finally settled in. He had anticipated this, long before anyone else saw the cracks forming. She walked toward the broken window. Kara, Ashbourne called, making her stop in her tracks. "If it was really not you, then it is probably Lex. Think before you act, or it will be the end of you." Ashbourne warned her. She didn't reply, just flew away without another word. Ashbourne stood at the shattered window, looking out over the now burning horizon. He had warned Luthor countless times. Funded Cadmus to lessen Earth's reliance on the man. Stopped the Thanagarian invasion to remove the need of creating the cannon. He even took in Amazo and gave him a place in the world. And despite all of it, the cannon was still built and fired. A few hours had passed since the blast that rattled the city and shook the balance between power and paranoia. The sun had set, but the skies still carried a faint glow from the distant fires that hadn't yet been tamed. Ashbourne sat back in his chair, fingers steepled, lost in thought, when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. "Amanda Waller." He answered with a calm voice. "Glad you're alive. I thought the beam would have turned you into ashes." Waller's voice came through, firm but tired. "It was a close call. There was a security breach, and we followed protocol by evacuating. Barely made it out." Ashbourne nodded slightly to himself, unsurprised. "Let me guess. You want to retaliate?" "Yes," her answer came instantly, without hesitation. "Our worst fears came to be. We need to go in full force." Ashbourne leaned back. "I won't ask Amazo to help you attack them." His tone sharpened. "You don't know for sure if it was them. It could just as easily be someone framing the League. The timing's too perfect to ignore, yes, but that makes it all the more foolish to jump to conclusions." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Amanda spoke again, quieter this time. "I expected that answer, just wanted to give it a shot." The line went dead. Ashbourne put the phone down gently on the desk. He didn't bring up Lex Luthor. Not yet. Let Cadmus and the League clash. Let them tear at each other's throats. Eventually, they'd realize they were being played. Eventually, they'd both look back and see how stupid they were, and hopefully they would balance each other better in the future. Rising from his chair, Ashbourne walked through the ruined hallway of his office. Shattered glass still littered the floor from Kara's earlier entrance. He passed the cracked remains of his desk, stepped through the quiet halls of Shadow Corp, and exited into the night. Galatea, POV. Since my last meeting with Ashbourne, I couldn't stop thinking about what he said. His words echoed through the hollow places inside me. He spoke to me as if I was an actual person. But was I a person? I didn't ask for this life. I didn't choose to be born from tubes and cold steel. I was created, engineered, breathed into existence by someone who called me a daughter but saw me as nothing more than a sentient weapon, a tool, and now I was leading an army of mindless clones charging the watchtower. I knew what this meant. I wasn't different from the ones I commanded. The only difference was that I could pretend. I could think. I could doubt. But at the end of the day, I was just another clone, expendable. While the others fought, creating chaos and distracting the Justice League, I slipped away, down deep into the underbelly of the watchtower, into the generator room. My mission was clear. Overload the diffusion core, destroy the station, kill everyone inside. I was nearly done loading the program when a loud crash interrupted my thoughts. A man in iron armor and a hammer came smashing through the wall. Steel. The moment he saw me, he didn't ask questions. He charged. I didn't speak. I didn't smirk. I didn't feel like mocking him or boasting. I just fought. With every punch, every throw, every crack of bone and steel, I felt heavier, angrier. Ashbourne's voice whispered inside me over and over. You have a choice, but you're still here. He said that. And yet here I was, trying to burn the light so my shadow would be all that remained. Another presence entered the room, the original Supergirl. She told me to stop, ordered me, as if I was just another puppet. I stopped. I obeyed, without thought. She looked at me, confused. What are you doing here? She asked, as if I even knew anymore. I stared at her. She had everything. Freedom, identity, existence. I had imitation. It doesn't matter, I finally said. Then I lunged. There were no witty lines, no condescending remarks, just fury, pure, seething, directionless fury. I beat her with everything I had. She tried to fight back, but she couldn't match me. I didn't let her. I didn't want her to. I wanted to destroy her, to end the original, and maybe somehow prove to myself that I was real, that I was more. In less than 30 seconds, I was holding her like a rag doll, her shoulders crushed under my grip. She looked up at me, bruised and bleeding, her voice strained and trembling, but still sharp as ever. You're just a clone. I'm the real one. Nothing you do will change that. Her words cut deeper than any blade. My vision went red, my eyes glowing with the heat of rage and rejection. I was ready to end her. Then Amanda Waller's voice crackled in my ear. Galatea, do you copy? Abandon the mission. Do you hear me? I froze. After everything, after all this effort, she wanted me to stop. Like a dog being called back from the fight, Ashbourne's words whispered again, this time filling me not with fury or doubt, but with clarity. I let go. Supergirl collapsed to the floor. I didn't look at her. I reached up, pulled out my comm, and crushed it in my hand. Then, without hesitation, I dug my fingers into my temple and tore out the control chip, the device that made me control them, the ultimate. I crushed that too. Then I turned and walked toward the closest wall. Supergirl rose weakly, her eyes wide, unsure of what she was seeing. Where are you going? What are you playing at? She asked, half breathless. I turned my head slightly, just enough to be heard. I'm walking away, I said. I've had enough of playing the attack dog. I've had enough of trying to prove anything. I stepped toward the wall, hand clenched into a fist. A shadow can be taller than the object that cast it. I paused. I know I am real, and I'm better than you. And with that, I pierced through the watchtower's wall and soared down to earth, cutting through the clouds. I didn't look back. I wouldn't look back. For the first time since I opened my eyes, I felt free.